They say that agriculture is a labour of love. Love for what? To be there when the green breaks the ground? Or to see how the smallest beginning grows to new heights? Maybe it's the way in which we bring people together. Or just knowing we're making a difference. From tractor to table, we are there. And we don't do it for one of these reasons, but all of them. We do it for the love of the land.
Food for Mzansi proudly salutes the unsung heroes of agriculture in South Africa. Initially, its co-founders, Ivor Price and Cobus Lawrence, embarked on a 3-month project to tell some of the stories so often overlooked by the mainstream media.
It's special to us. It means something to us. It means something to the readers we represent. It kind of feels strange calling them readers anyway. It feels like family.
Food for Mzansi believes in the power of agriculture to unite the nation, to heal, to move South Africa forward.
Agriculture is like the big common denominator in South Africa, since it touches everybody every day, and also it is such a microcosm of all the different divisions, and many of the things that are wrong in South African society are just laid bare there on a very basic level.
Food for Mzansi's editorial team unashamedly shares success stories and good news from the farms and agribusinesses who feed South Africa. That being said, they don't hesitate to speak truth to power.
When I first got that call, it kind of shook me to my core. I also cried with him when he was relaying his emotions, and as a member of the Food for Mzansi team, to actually have played a hand, it makes me emotional. Sorry. To have played a hand in helping him get justice is a big honor for me.
They've never been featured on any kind of magazine. They've never been featured on any type of publication. So when you connect with these people and they tell your stories and it eventually gets published on Food for Mzansi, when these people come back to you and they say, because of that article, they were able to connect with more farmers, they were able to infiltrate more markets, I think for me that's one of the most rewarding feelings.
So I think we represent what people would call the Rainbow Nation. People think that it doesn't exist, but I think it exists at Food for Mzansi. We bring together people not because of the color of their skin or the language that they speak or their background, but because they love agriculture and they love to produce food. And I think that is what we represent at Food for Mzansi, that face of agriculture. It is with great pleasure and an absolute honor to welcome you to the very first Pan-African Summit on Youth in Sustainable Agriculture. This event is brought to you by Food for Mzansi and foodforafrica.com and is proudly sponsored by Access. My name is Dawn Numdu. I'm the editor for Audience and Engagement at Food for Mzansi, a leading South African agriculture publication. My co-host is Andile Ngobo, a well-known KwaZulu-Natal farmer and agriculture consultant. Joining us virtually from Pretoria to say a few words is Chrisanti Mikelades, the acting CEO of Access South Africa. Now, in September of this year, Access Bank South Africa announced an appointment of the CFO, Chrisanti Mikelades, as its new acting CEO. And she has been the driving force behind Access Bank's acquisition of GrowBank. Transitioning, her expertise was focused on cementing the bank during the much publicized sub-Saharan footprint as a groundbreaking African continental free trade agreement works towards regional. Welcome, good morning, Chrysanthi. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning, everybody. It is a real privilege to be part of this summit, and we're very excited to be here today and to promote the summit. As a Pan-African bank, we believe in sustainability for the continent, and the youth are key in ensuring sustainability in the food agricultural space to ensure we get fed and that we are basically, our tummies are filled all the time. We are proud to be part of the summit. I really wish you guys have a good summit. Also, there'll be good lessons to be learned, and there are great opportunities as a Pan-African that we can basically feed into the rest of the world. Thank you very much. And I believe there's quite an exciting agenda coming up. So everybody enjoy yourselves, and thank you very much for being here today with us. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us, Chrysanthi, Acting CEO of Access South Africa.
As a friend of Food from Mzansi, I am always surprised at the caliber of people who are loyal readers of the publication, not only in farming circles, from former Finance Minister Tito Mboweni tweeting about Food from Mzansi to the publication being discussed in government circles. We take great pleasure in welcoming Thoko Didiza, the Minister of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development in South Africa. Mam Thoko Didiza is a well-loved name in South African politics. This is not her first rodeo in agriculture. She first served as Agriculture and Land Affairs Minister under the leadership of former President Nelson Mandela from 1999 to 2006. Minister Didiza holds degrees in sociology and politics, as well as a number of diplomas in journalism, business and financial management, and public relations.
Program Director, Ms. Grace Obeda, Principal Youth Employment Officer at the African Development Bank, fellow speakers, senior officials of governments present, shareholders of Food from Mzansi, and staff, delegates. It is with humility that I accepted your invitation to participate in this inaugural Pan-African Summit on Youth in Sustainable Agriculture. This summit coincides with the birthday of Food from Mzansi online publication. Happy birthday to you, and may you grow in leaps and bounds. Food from Mzansi in its 3 years have done so much in profiling the agricultural sector in our country. It has ensured that the diverse and critical views are heard. At the height of COVID-19 pandemic, this online publication has fed the sector with information and advice relating to regulations that impacted on agriculture and agribusiness industry. As we're preparing for the UN Summit on Food Systems, they were there to carry the views of stakeholders, including perspectives from young people, women, and people living with disabilities. Delegates, this summit represents an important milestone in agriculture, agribusiness, and our response to climate change following the recently held COP26 held in Glasgow a week ago. Climate change is not an environmental issue alone. It is equally an agricultural and economic issue. Developing technologies that will ensure our agriculture remain resilient is now a necessity. Digitization has been propelled and fast-tracked by the impact of COVID-19 pandemic, especially when it comes to trade. We have seen in the past years how some of our countries have battled droughts and flood as a result of climate change. These phenomena have impacted smallholder and rural farmers severely. Food security has also been under threat, and unemployment has been on the rise given job shedding from farm and agricultural enterprises. As if this was not enough, agricultural finance has had its own disruptions. We have an aging cohort of agricultural workers and producers, and therefore we need to attract young and agile people who will form the bedrock of agriculture and agribusiness now and in the future. we have come together as young people under the banner of agriculture, where we are reigniting the spirit of Pan-Africanism. This is important as it seeks to frame our collaboration and engagement for the future. This summit offers us a platform in which we can take stock of our participation as young people in the sector, share our own experiences, successes, and learn from one another how we can deal with issues that are of a challenge. But at the same time, we are able to build collaborative partnerships for growth. The past year, when the COVID-19 pandemic came to our shores, it tested the resilience of our food systems. There were threats of food insecurity as countries went on total lockdown. Countries had to immediately close borders so as to manage the virus by tracking and tracing, as well as treating those who were infected as a way of slowing the virus down. This was done in order to save lives and livelihoods. Countries that were dependent on food imports were the most affected in this regard. Rapid interventions by the African Union in partnership with the Food and Agriculture Organization facilitated engagements of ministers of agriculture with the aim of finding ways of addressing this impending crisis. We were able, to a large extent, to succeed. But I must also say, the engagements of ministers of agriculture in the African continent, as well as the ministers of trade and finance in July last year, enabled us to locate the importance of agriculture when countries are building back during and even post the pandemic. We do so because agriculture remains one of the largest employer in our continent, particularly when it comes to farm enterprises as well as agribusiness. It is also a sector that ensures that we provide for food security for our nation in terms of food and fiber. But it's also a sector with which we are able to trade and give and get revenues for our countries. It is therefore important that in locating the economic recoveries of our countries, agriculture must be at the center. We have learned some lessons during this period of hard lockdowns. Firstly, we appreciated the need for strengthening rural farmers and smallholder producers in order to support household food security. Secondly, the agricultural logistics and its critical importance in the movement of goods within countries as well as for exports became even more important. Thirdly, quick amendment of agricultural certification requirements for trade from manual to electronic certification had to be put in place, and negotiations with trading partners were actually necessitated in order to allow for trade, albeit limited time. Remote working called for an immediate uptake of information and communication technologies so as to continue providing services to the sector even under these constraints caused by the pandemic. This impacted those in the civil service as well as the industry and farmers alike. As young people, both in and outside the agricultural sector, you need to engage and find solutions on how to grow a vibrant agricultural sector that will continue to contribute to sustainable food security for the various countries and our continent, thereby reducing poverty and hunger. I look forward to the outcomes of this summit. I believe your deliberations will go a long way in shaping our policy perspectives and improve our programmatic interventions in order to support you. Let me wish you a successful inaugural Pan-African Summit on Youth in Sustainable Agriculture. May we build the Africa we want in our lifetime. Congratulations to Food from Mzansi.
And I would like to officially say thank you once again to Umamthoko Didiza, the Minister of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you've just tuned in, welcome to the Pan-African Summit on Youth in Sustainable Agriculture, proudly brought to you by Food for Mzansi, foodforafrica.com, and foodforafrica.com. This event is, of course, proudly sponsored by Access, and we are now ready to go to Abidjan in Côte d'Ivoire for our keynote address. We are honored to introduce Grace Obeda, the Principal Youth Employment Officer for the African Development Bank. She's passionate about securing the future of African food systems through African youth. The African Development Bank overarching objectives is to spur sustainable economic development and social progress in its regional member countries, thus contributing to poverty reduction. Over to you, Grace.
Honorable Minister Thoko Didiza, Minister for South Africa's Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development, representatives of the World Food Forum, the Food and Agricultural Organization of the United Nations and Nourishing Africa, farmers, agripreneurs, and friends of agriculture from across the African continent, friends of Food from Mzansi and Food for Africa, all protocols observed, good morning. I wish to express my sincere appreciation for the opportunity to be the keynote speaker in this Pan-African Summit for Youth in Sustainable Agriculture, and a very happy birthday to Food from Mzansi. Ladies and gentlemen, today we are talking about youth in sustainable agriculture. What a timely debate. Africa's most valuable asset and sustainable competitive advantage is not in its land, oil, gas, and minerals. It's demographically dominant youth. 70% of Africans are under 35 years. This is according to statistics in 2019 of the African Development Bank, and they are projected to reach 850 million by 2050 and will constitute half of 2 billion working age population by 2063. Prior to COVID-19, Africa's employment has been lagging such that African countries needed to create an average of 1.7 million jobs per month from 2013 to 2063, just to meet the current employment needs. About 54 million youth are not in employment, education, or training. Where are these young people? I hope we can discuss this as we move on in today's session. In just about a year and a half now, the COVID-19 pandemic has devastated the livelihoods of millions of youth globally. This increase in unemployment because of the COVID-19 is expected to exceed the employment rates from the 2009 global financial crisis. The ILO estimates that more than 1 in 6 young people have stopped working due to the pandemic. Furthermore, skills training opportunities for youth have been interrupted, creating long-term implications for post-COVID-19 recovery. There's a serious jobs deficit that will even get worse as the population continues to grow, since Africa's private sector, which provides most of employment, is not growing fast enough, and neither can governments provide enough jobs. What does this mean then? That Africa has to harness its demographic dividend by equipping its youth with the required skills and tools to create jobs, make livelihoods for themselves through sustainable entrepreneurship development. Fortunately, even with these vulnerables, opportunities for youth are presenting themselves so prominently, more in the digital space. And why? Because as young people, you have a competitive advantage over your older counterparts when it comes to application of technology. In fact, sectors with high level of digitization seem to have weathered the storm, the COVID-19 pandemic storm, much better than those that didn't. We know that agriculture remains the backbone of Africa's economic development, and the best way to transform it is through raising productivity. And this could be productivity from farm level all the way to the market. And therefore, supporting youth, especially rural youth in agribusiness, will be one of Africa's winning strategies to creating sustainable jobs, taming rural-urban migration and developing alternative cities. Scaling up youth-led agribusinesses through dedicated business development services is key to unlocking their great potential. So I guess that's why we are here today, talking about the role that youth can play in transforming Africa's food systems, because agriculture is a sector with endless possibilities if properly diversified. The opportunity for young people can also be unlocked through making agriculture digitally enabled, because youth want to see agriculture as a cool business. The African Development Bank has adopted several flagships to facilitate youth in agribusiness. One such program is the Enable Youth Program that clearly demonstrates that with greater access to agribusiness, youth can become the driving force for agricultural transformation in Africa. The Enable Youth Program aims to support African member countries to invest in youth agribusinesses sector. It has so far been implemented in 14 countries, representing an investment of over $400 million over the past 4 years. Direct youth beneficiaries from these 14 projects is estimated at 23,000, with a projection of approximately 58,000 jobs created. Digital skills have become critical in the agriculture sector. Equipping youth with relevant skills goes beyond technical skills, but also includes ensuring they acquire soft skills such as self-confidence, teamwork, leadership, discipline, and following directions, therefore providing opportunity to improve the employability of youth and facilitating transfer of those soft skills to various sectors such as agriculture and also ICT. And this is part of the African Development Bank's agenda. One of the other programs that we are running is the Coding for Employment program, which is a flagship initiative with an overall aim of equipping 234,000 youth with demand-driven digital skills. The program has successfully trained 17,000 beneficiaries, 47% being women, in hybrid learning model on digital literacy, entrepreneurship, and soft skills in order to prepare the youth in Africa for the fourth industrial revolution. Ladies and gentlemen, to respond to Africa's need to process and add value to agriculture produce and create employment opportunities for young people as well as the population, the bank under its Feed Africa strategy is working with several countries to develop special agro-industrial processing zones in rural areas. As you well know, food and agribusinesses in Africa are usually located in the urban areas, always close to the ports, but not in rural areas. Disconnected from their supply chains and logistics, farmers suffer high food losses due to food transport and storage, and limited opportunities for large-scale food processing. So we ask ourselves all the time, why are all businesses situated in the urban areas? Why is that set up? It's simple, because the necessary infrastructure is missing. Obviously, this raises the cost of doing business. So the bank is making a big push to end the inequality of infrastructure by working with governments and private sector to bring critical, high quality and integrated infrastructure into rural areas and generate commercial and entrepreneurial opportunities. But most importantly, allow youth to provide technical solutions within these investments as entrepreneurs, service providers, extension workers, logistical suppliers, and many other opportunities that are in the agri value chain. In collaboration with the Global Center on Adaptation, the African Development Bank are jointly implementing the African Adaptation Acceleration Program. It's a 4-year program. It has a youth pillar, a very strong youth pillar, called the Youth Adapt Flagship Program. The aim of this pillar is to promote innovation for young people in climate resilient jobs, develop skills for employability, and facilitate access to finance for youth-led MSMEs in the climate change adaptation ecosystem. 10 young businesswomen and men across Africa have won $100,000 each in this year's Youth Adapt competition. The winners were announced on Friday, 5th November at the African Pavilion in Glasgow during the COP26 UN Climate Conference. Out of the winners, The majority are businesses run by young women in various parts of the continent. In addition to the 100,000 grant, US dollars, each winner will get the opportunity to participate in a 12-month accelerator program to help them to grow their businesses, deepen their impact, and create decent jobs. The winning enterprises, obviously, in this program provide climate adaptation and resilience solutions in critical social and economic sectors affected by climate change, including agriculture. In fact, 80% of the winners in this year's competition were in providing solutions for the agricultural sector. The other sectors like water resource management and sanitation, renewable energy, waste resource management, and ecosystem restoration. The question is, are young people tapping into these opportunities or not? And why not? The processes are competitive and do not exclude anyone. The bank continues to execute its mandate through the Jobs for Youth in Africa strategy to deliver on creating 25 million jobs and equipping 50 million youth to access economic opportunities, partly through those flagships. So ladies and gentlemen, the future is very bright for youth in Africa. Gone are the days of hopelessness, the days when the well-to-do would be those with land, resources, capital, connections. This present time, it's your entrepreneurial spirit, the ability to innovate, to adopt the right technology and build your brand that will shape your success. The second question that I have is, how are you positioning yourself for support? I believe there are so many resources out there, just like the ones I've mentioned, all targeting young people in Africa. But do you have a solid business plan that can give you confidence to a potential investor to plug their resources in your business, giving them a reason why they need to invest in you? Yes, we know that there are specific issues that need to be addressed by development partners such as the African Development Bank and other development partners, as well as the governments. Those issues, we know them. One such critical issue is tailoring innovative, affordable, accessible, and flexible finance for you, and also strengthening the entrepreneurship ecosystem so that it can nurture your businesses in a life cycle approach. But you also must be proactive in ensuring that you are building yourself up to the challenge. Take the initiative to build your brand as a person, your business, and stand out. Work hard and seek help from those who are ahead of you so that you can attract financing, you can access markets and networks that can help you to accelerate your business to the next level. So with those few remarks, I wish you well in today's deliberations and hope to see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you very much to Grace Obeda. I know she touched on quite a lot of various aspects of youth involvement in agriculture, but being from KZN, there are two very most important points that she touched on that are also quite close to my heart, in a sense that in some of the agricultural consulting work that I do, I find that a lot of youth who have tried their best to not just wait to find employment, but to start on the journey of establishing something and to also become employers, they face a difficult challenge of being stuck in the rural areas. And they produce magnificent produce, the best, the great quality, graded perfectly. The only issue they always have is that 2-hour transport that now is so expensive to get their produce to the markets because the nearest city is 2 hours away, or not having infrastructure for storage facilities. And obviously these platforms where we can sort of supply produce, those are usually something that we expect from our local governments to put together so that there's access for people closer to rural areas. So those are some of the things that I feel still need to be addressed. And the second most important thing that you mentioned pertaining the youth more specifically is, one, looking at various enterprises, agriculture is not just about production alone, but it's also about the infrastructure. So I know of some young people who have come together to start looking at various ways of moving away from being on ISCOM electricity, but getting off the grid and looking at solutions like solar, you know what I mean? And the second one is the most important aspect of administration. Sometimes we lose out on opportunities simply because we, as the youth, are so excited about getting the work done and being hands-on that we forget to do the administration behind that proves that our businesses are winning. So thank you very much to Grace for highlighting these.
I couldn't agree more, Andile, and I think that something that you do very well is building your brand to showcase your success, and that's one thing that I also wanted to highlight from her presentation today. So I'm also loving the diversity of our speakers here today. It really represents Africa's finest young farmers, agripreneurs, and other movers and shakers in the sector. We now travel further afield on our beautiful continent, and we welcome Ramat Ifenyagoro, who joins us from Lagos, Nigeria. Rahmat is the co-founder and CEO of Nourishing Africa, where she leads the company's membership engagement activities and internal business operations. She has spent the past 3 years providing project implementation and advisory services on key agricultural value chains in Nigeria, including cocoa and cassava. Without any further ado, we now move over to Rahmat, who's joining us from Lagos, Nigeria.
All right, thank you so much for the introduction. As Donna's introduced, my name is Rahmat Nkujankosi at Nourishing Africa, and I'm extremely delighted to be presenting this topic to the audience today. Agriculture, young people, entrepreneurs, agri-SMEs, technology are really important topics for us at Nourishing Africa, and we're extremely delighted to be here to make this presentation. So I'll be talking about agri-food entrepreneurs who are transforming Africa's agriculture and food landscapes. Just give me a moment so I can take all of this right off my screen and focus on the presentation, right? So first I'll be talking about the agricultural excellence of the African continent. To dive right into it, we all know that our dear continent is well endowed for agricultural excellence. But just to bring all of this to the fore, we have already had Grace from AFDB, Zoko, who have already spoken extensively about the creativity of our young people and how many of these African countries are already setting the pace. We've already talked about some challenges, but to bring this closer to home, we already know that about 50 to 70% of the African population is involved in agriculture. We have 80% of the food produced on the continent by smallholder farmers. And we know that 60% of the world's arable lands is in Africa. And when it comes to food production, we are number one on a range of crops, from cashew nuts and cocoa produced in Côte d'Ivoire to plantain in Democratic Republic of Congo, to fonio in Guinea, to teas in Kenya, cassava, cowpeas, sorghum in Nigeria. And 70% of the world's cocoa is sourced from West Africa. This is a huge opportunity that the agricultural landscape has when it comes to the agriculture sector. Now, when we talk about our sheer size and population, this is something we already know. But again, to put it right in our faces, do you know that the true size of Africa can actually fit in the US, China, Japan, and many other countries when we talk about the land mass in Africa? Now, when we talk about our population, we know that by 2050, it is projected that the African continent will have 2.4 billion people. Now, doing the maths, when we say at the very minimum, if each person spends a single dollar a day on food, this is actually an $876 billion annual market. Now, let's say we have economic improvement and we have better lifestyles, and people spend $10 a day. This is $8.8 trillion annual market. And the World Bank estimates that by 2030, the food market in Africa alone will stand at $1 trillion. This is a huge opportunity. This is a huge opportunity gap just waiting to be filled. Now, the data reveals that there is hunger and malnutrition in our land. Across Africa, we have 20% prevalence of malnutrition and acute food insecurity. 30% of children under 5 years are stunted. We have 7.1% of children under 5 years in Africa facing chronic long-standing malnutrition and 8% prevalence of obesity. Talk about similar data. When we compare the data, we have 5.1 million people who are malnourished in northern Nigeria alone. 44% of children under 5 years have chronic long-standing malnutrition. Children between 0 to 59 months are stunted, and we have 11% prevalence of undernutrition among women of 15 to 49 years. Mind you, this is information right before COVID-19. So we can imagine that this situation has been aggravated in the space of the last 1 to 1.5 years. Now, I want to quote Dr. Akinwumi Adesina, the president of the FGB, who has said that economic progress is being undermined by hunger, malnutrition, and stunting, and this costs sub-Saharan Africa at least $25 billion. And we are leaving a legacy of loss, of pain, and of ruined potential. And we all know that stunted children can lead to stunted economies. And when we think about all the huge potential of our land mass, of our teeming population, of our agricultural endowment, then we begin to ask ourselves, where are we going wrong? But we have seen, especially in recent times, that transformation is entirely possible. Technology is already accelerating agriculture transformation. In 2018 alone, we have seen that 426 million unique mobile subscribers are in sub-Saharan Africa. This digital mobile uptake is a huge opportunity. We've seen the emergence of agricultural technology, from sensors to bioengineering to mobile applications to automated technology. And we are seeing that ag tech companies are really setting the pace, especially during the COVID-19 period. You know, we have a standing joke at Nourishing Africa that COVID-19 alone was solely responsible for technology adaptation and adoption of some companies across the globe, actually, but more in Africa, because it was really clear that businesses need to adopt technology or die. Now, from novel farming systems to agribusiness marketplace, supply chain technologies, farm management software, innovative food ranging from cultured meat, novel ingredients, plant-based proteins, alternative diets, to farm robotics, online food marketplaces, agri-biotechnology, we are seeing them all. And the most interesting thing of them all is that African agri-food entrepreneurs are out there showing us what is possible. So I'm going to outline a few of such agri-food entrepreneurs on the continent, from Northern Africa to Southern Africa to West Africa to East Africa. We have all of these wonderful businesses who have developed innovative and sustainable business models, who are winning at every front, who are putting Africa on the global stage through their innovative business models. Starting from Real Fruit in Nigeria that is producing dried fruit snacks, including such as mango and pineapple, made in Nigeria, sourced from local farmers and selling to the world. To Akima in Kenya that is producing gluten-free millet snacks and ready-to-use therapeutic foods for children, especially in rural communities in Africa. Then we have the likes of Maneli Pets in South Africa, a specialist manufacturer of premium pet treats for the global pet market. I was extremely excited about this model because it targets the pets market, which we know is a growing market across the globe. Now we have Lolionsi in Senegal that specializes in food and infant nutrition. Another one that I am specifically excited about, because we know that Africa is a huge importer of baby food. And when we have the likes of Lolionsi producing local made nutritious baby food, good for the baby, good for the mothers, then these are simply innovations that we're proud of. Now we have the Charis UAS in Rwanda using drone imaging technology to detect crop variability and disease. Then we have Elo Tractor in Nigeria, an agricultural technology social enterprise that uses proprietary technology to pair smart tractor owners with smallholder farmers. Various interviews, CNN and the rest have dubbed Elo Tractor as the Uber for smallholder farmers. And this is one of those business models that we're excited about because it is bringing innovation and attention to the African continent and setting us on the global stage, right? Now we have Sikewa in Cote d'Ivoire, that is a digital financing platform dedicated to African smallholder farmers where various funders and investors can actually support agricultural projects through crowdfunding. For Cow Tribe in Ghana, this is a subscription-based service that allows smallholder farmers to access, cow vaccination, veterinary in hydroponics and engages rural women to produce food and make sure that food is available 365 days in a year. We also have Black Mamba in Eswatini that manufactures and distributes specialty food products, also engaging young women and rural women farmers in Eswatini. Lastly, we have My Farm Base here in Nigeria, leveraging technology, research, and advocacy to enable, empower, and connect young agri-food entrepreneurs to markets, to climate information, extension, and agribusiness services. And lastly, we have EcoGen in Malawi that integrates biogas technology and sustainable agriculture. These are just a few examples of these innovative young agripreneurs that are actually, breaking boundaries through their innovative business models. And if you see from the very first example to the last, they are solving a range of problems in the landscape, from climate change to access to markets, to cold chain technologies, to food preservation, to food alternatives, to plant-based diets. They are incorporating all the problems and challenges in the agricultural landscape, and through their business models are providing innovative solutions. The continent cannot be more proud of these young agri-food entrepreneurs. And you know what? They are setting the pace. They are winning and placing African agriculture on a global landscape. From winning funding, raising funding from investors, entering into competition, international competition, from being recognized as top 500, top 10 food business heroes, they are doing the continent proud. And at Nourishing Africa, we cannot be more proud of these young entrepreneurs. Now, I want to share some of the insights from our work at Nourishing Africa. Dawn had mentioned a bit about what we do, but we are a knowledge and membership platform aimed at scaling African agribusinesses. And this is how I am able to connect and use these many agri-food entrepreneurs as examples because they are our members. So how do we help agri-food entrepreneurs to scale? We do this through 3 innovative ways. One is through a membership portal that is a virtual community for agri-food entrepreneurs and enthusiasts across various countries on the continent to connect directly with each other, because we believe that peer-to-peer networking, collaborative models have a great way to play in building the ecosystem. We also invest heavily in knowledge and capacity building to build the capacity of these agri-food entrepreneurs, because we understand that there is a need to constantly build their capacity, to constantly be on top of their game, to be able to deliver their values. Now we also build and implement support programs in partnership with various development partners to help support these agri-food entrepreneurs. These are just a range of our partners, and these are our reach and impact across the landscape, from training of over 5,000 agri-food entrepreneurs. We have over 1,300 SMEs on the platform from 36 or 54 countries in Africa, and we continuously nominate many of them for various opportunities. Now, I want to end by quickly talking about some key learnings from this agriculture and food entrepreneurs. The first is that technology is a great enabler and lever for agricultural and economic transformation. Secondly, we have seen that sustainable and profitable business models are built on principles of inclusion, of innovation, agility, partnerships, positive storytelling, and providing local solutions. We cannot build sustainable business models without providing local solutions. We have also seen from our work and interacting with these SMEs that providing sustainable solutions, the agriculture sector can provide sustainable solutions to unemployment, to economic instability, climate change, and malnutrition on the continent. Now, rural livelihoods can greatly be improved by building essential bridges between smallholder farmers and essential markets, which is the gap that these agri-food entrepreneurs are bridging on a daily basis on the continent. These entrepreneurs also serve as critical role models for the emerging generation of the talent workforce in the sector. And platforms like Nourishing Africa are critical for building synergies and connecting, empowering, and scaling these agri-food entrepreneurs. And I would say that we have seen that agri-food entrepreneurs are positioned to drive economic transformation of the agriculture and food landscapes and ensure that the continent feeds itself and becomes a net exporter of food. Finally, I have some practical steps for stakeholders to consider. The first is to support agri-food entrepreneurs to build sustainable and profitable businesses. This is through investment, this is through advocacy, this is through training and development. And I know that a number of partners on this call many of these entrepreneurs have created really amazing products, from infant food to creative alternative diets to nutritious foods. We as Africans have to patronize them, buy their products so that the continent can actually become a net exporter of food. We also have to advocate for favorable policies so that there is a level playing field for the farmers, the processors, and the food champions. We have to actively take action against climate change. I can hear somebody. Okay. I will just round up now. And we also have the African government have to create an enabling environment through provision of infrastructure, financial incentives, market linkages, and sustainable policies. We also have to change our mindset and create positive stories. Now to join Nourishing Africa, I know there are many agri-SMEs on the call. You can join Nourishing Africa. I'll drop the link so I don't need to go through all of this. But I'll drop the link in the chat. So if you have any questions at all, I am excited to take these questions from you. Thank you so much for the opportunity. And I really hope that we can all join hands to support agriculture and food entrepreneurs across the continent. Thank you.
15 different countries joining us virtually. Feel free to leave your comments or questions on the live stream on Food from Mzansi Facebook page. And to those posting on social media, please do not forget to use the hashtags, hashtag Food from Mzansi, hashtag FFM_turns3, and hashtag AgriYouth. Mark Domas Johansen is an agriculture and food security specialist with Green Climate Fund. He leads and coordinates the review of agriculture, food security, and related natural resources projects from project ideas to full funding proposals presented to the GCF board for approval. Prior to the GCF, Mark worked with the Food and Agriculture Organization in several positions, based both at the headquarters in Rome, working on forests, climate change, and GEF project design and implementation, as well as in the sub-regional office for Southern Africa in Harare, Zimbabwe.
Good morning and good afternoon, colleagues. Thank you so much for the kind introduction and for inviting me to this meeting today. Great pleasure to be with you. I hope that you can all hear me okay. So I prepared a little presentation. I'll quickly pull it up here. Hopefully this should all be on full screen now. I hope you're able to all see this. Okay, excellent. So first of all, many thanks again for this opportunity to speak to you today on climate smart agriculture in the context of youth. It's super fascinating to have this opportunity to engage with you, and I really look forward to the questions and the later discussion. I prepared a few slides first on what I see is the key challenges we are facing right now with food production from a climate perspective, and then what I also find as some of the solutions we can find, and then some additional slides on the Green Climate Fund and how we try to work on that particular topic. So maybe taking a step back and putting this in context with what happened the last 2 weeks in Glasgow at COP26 and all the discussions and the key outcomes is indeed that science, the climate science, is back on the table. Climate change is real, it is happening, and it is causing a lot of problems for us, in particular when it comes to food production. Just looking at this map, for example, gives you the overview of many of the key challenges we're facing today and are likely going to see a lot more of in the future, where food production will be impacted, in particular in sub-Saharan Africa and Southeast Asia. You see here, for example, droughts, floods, and climate variability going to change quite dramatically going forward. If we then look particular at food production, we have to, I think, first of all, look at this from a perspective of population as well. With a growing population, and how are we going to meet that demand? We have the same amount of land, more or less. Of course, we can change what we have available on the planet, as you see to the right here. We can cut down our forests, or we can change things around, but of course that will have severe consequences in the other way. So the availability of changing that equation of land is limited. We have to produce more with less. But taking into account here also that climate change is already impacting our crop yields. It's estimated that to 2030 that crop production yields will decrease by 10 to 50%. And so with that additional challenge, how can we then produce enough? What kind of food should we produce, perhaps? Should we change the way we produce things? Looking at, for example, just the smallholders and some of the most vulnerable populations, they may only account for 12%, but they actually provide a livelihood for more than 2 billion people worldwide. And how can we support those groups? How can we improve their farming systems? If we look at also the perspective of food loss and waste, it's a huge topic at the moment, and it's going to grow a lot in attention, I believe. Looking at food waste alone at the consumer level, we have numbers indicating that this is larger than any country. It's basically larger than any other country except China or the USA. So there's a huge amount of options out there in terms of the economics that we can bring out from a food system and addressing these issues. So again, the challenge, to summarize here, is we have in front of us, I think, going forward is how can we produce more with less? How can our food systems be more resilient, and we can produce more with less while we can lower the GHG emissions? And there's no straightforward answer to this for sure, but I think looking at the topic we have today on climate smart agriculture, that's for sure one of the key ways to go forward. And also one of the key systems that we work with at the Green Climate Fund going forward. And again, bringing this back to youth, I mean, this is definitely a way where all of you and many of our other networks and youth will really find and foster those solutions that we need to go forward. So what is climate smart agriculture? Very, very quickly here, just a quick slide on this. There are many different definitions and ways to look at it, and many other systems or approaches that are the same but called differently. But climate smart agriculture basically is looking at how do we manage our productive systems, land, crops, livestock, aquaculture, and so on. Looking at it from an adaptation and mitigation perspective, how can we make it more resilient, and how can we grow things in a more resilient way? that's also looking really at ecosystem and the overall landscape system around our farming products and how we can integrate that broader landscape into our production. It's also to have the services provided to farmers so they can have the sufficient capacities to manage those risks that are coming with climate change and already are happening now. And finally, also to look at this from an overall food system perspective. There was a very big event recently in New York on the UN Food Systems Summit that also really, for the first time perhaps, did we have a food system event at that level, but also linking it to climate change and how we need to transform our food systems. And that has to be, first of all, through a climate smart approach. So looking at this perhaps overview here of a food system, that can be from the local level or the global level, and of course anything in between, really is, I believe, a good way to start on what we can do at the different stages and what climate smart agriculture can do a lot of the way. Looking at the bottom left at the pre-production stage, a lot of the food loss really happens at the pre-production and the production stage, in particular for smallholders that are the most vulnerable farmers. And I think here we have a lot of options to target that challenge, to reduce food loss, and in particular that coming from climate change. How do we make that system more robust and more resilient for the farmers? But again, also looking at it from the consumer side, how do we actually reduce food waste by being better at using what we have? We will free up more land, and we will need to also probably produce different things going forward if we are to meet those challenges I mentioned. And here, of course, it has to be through a climate smart production system. And again, all these opportunities that are combined in this system from one side to the other really is crucial that youth is involved in all of this and part. This needs to be financed somehow. These solutions, there are many ways to finance these things, of course, at the local level, national level, regional and global. One of the many options is what we try to do with the Green Climate Fund. We are currently considered one of the largest, the world's largest climate finance institution, and work with a lot of other partners that work in the same direction. And what we do is we support countries to find climate smart solutions across different sectors. We work through partnerships with our accredited entities that are local organizations or international organizations. They can be UN organizations or ministries or NGOs for many different countries. And of course also with the government focal point in each country that will lay out the country priorities. And then we work through different funding modalities here, from readiness to national adaptation plans to larger projects and programs. And what is a good project, or what is a good climate smart project? So of course, first of all, it has to be a climate project. We are a climate fund, so what we provide funding for is how to increase adaptation or mitigation benefits. It has to be fully aligned with the country. It has to be country-driven, country ownership, and of course the climate science that is presented has to be there. For our climate smart agriculture projects, a lot of the science that is presented is really how climate change is impacting agriculture in a certain country or ecosystem, and how the project seeks to overcome those challenges that are happening in that particular context. So we look at the different investment criteria we have listed here, and then perhaps to the most interesting for right now is what are the areas we work with. So the different result areas where agriculture, where I work, is one of them, that is now located on the health, food and water security. But of course, these are all linked together, and looking at a food system and climate smart agriculture, it's linked to energy, to ecosystems and so on. So this is a quick view on what we work on. I'm going to go in now to a few slides on the specific things we work on in the agriculture sector, where climate smart agriculture is fully embedded in all of it. We have recently launched and released this sectoral guide. It's currently online, and I can share the link with all of you, where we are looking at paradigm shifting pathways. How can we at the fund promote very innovative projects that can really help on the ground make a change in the agricultural systems to make them more climate smart, basically. And we have identified 3 main pathways. The first one you see here is resilient agroecology, basically another term you could say for climate smart agriculture. And the second one here is better access to information, climate information services, so the farmer will be able to make a better decision with better access to information. And finally, at the more overall level, at the food system level, how can we transform our food systems to be more resilient? So I'm conscious of time, colleagues, so I'll run quickly through the last few slides I have here, basically going into detail across these 3 pathways. And the first one here again is as I mentioned, on agroecology, which is a pretty similar concept to climate smart agriculture. Really looking at how can we have farming systems where we have better access to seeds, more resilient seeds or crop varieties that we can introduce, and how can we diversify that farming system so it is a more polyculture system with as many different species and varieties as possible to reduce the risks and at least spread them across the system. That also looks at different techniques. You could think of IPM here, forestry, and so forth. And I think this is, again, back to the first slide I had on the current impacts of climate change and what the IPCC colleagues have identified as some of the best solutions out there in terms of land management. You see here on the table below here, what are the different agricultural practices that are considered important for mitigation and adaptation and so forth. So I think a diversified agricultural system such as agroforestry, for example, is one of the best and most well-documented ones to work very well. But of course, to do that, to be able to do climate smart agriculture, you need to have access to information to make better decisions on your farm and how you can be better protected against shocks. So what we also try to do is we also want to stimulate projects that can help set this up in countries and support governments and communities setting up information systems, generating that system in the most innovative way to give everyone access to free and very easy accessible data that you could use for different things to help the farm attract private sector and so forth. Index insurances where you could protect the farmers with different insurance mechanisms to make sure that if there is a climate incident happening, they can somehow be protected if the harvest will fail, for example. And finally, on the food systems, of course, all this is the 2 first ones are linked to food systems because it's how we produce things, it's how we consume it, it's how we process it and transport it and so on and all that. And I think really the solution to all of this, I think, in my view, really is how do we change all that? How do we change the way we produce food, how we store it, how we transport it, we sell it, and how we consume it? And all that needs to change dramatically, I believe, if we are to really make a difference. There's a lot of great opportunities already, and many attempts are already there. But a lot more is needed if the discussions from Glasgow, for sure, indicated we need to raise our ambition on doing business if we are to solve the climate crisis. And looking at how we produce food, how we reduce food loss and waste, for example, and how we shift our consumption to more sustainable products. The products we eat now, I think, will really need to change if we are to stand a chance. The availability of land, as I mentioned, and how we use that land and the surrounding ecosystems is really crucial. So I think that's a fantastic opportunity for youth in general to really look at what are the solutions right there. How can we foster those solutions at all levels and create jobs, create entrepreneurships, and really pushing the agricultural sector into a more sustainable direction. So with that, dear colleagues, thank you very much for your attention. This was really, really great to have this opportunity to share these thoughts with you. And yeah, I look very much forward to the questions. And of course, also beyond this conference today, please feel free to write to me, and happy to continue this discussion in any way. Thank you very much.
I must say that I'm loving all the love that we're getting from all over Africa on Twitter. So hashtag FFM turns 3 and hashtag AgriYouth is our handles and hashtags for this summit. And I'm looking forward to the rest of the discussions.
Andrew Ardington grew up on a sugarcane cattle farm in KwaZulu-Natal, South Africa. Ahead of its time, the farm began integrating sugarcane farming with cover crops and cattle in the 1970s. He obtained his BSc degree in agricultural economics from the University of KwaZulu-Natal. In 1994, he commenced his career in the tourism industry, worked as a game ranger at Mala Mala Game Reserve, advancing his love and understanding of nature and its systems. In 2016, Andrew once again got involved in cattle farming, and this rekindled his interest in agriculture that works with rather than against nature. Andrew became immersed in regenerative agriculture and the possibilities it presented regarding the healing of agricultural soils, planetary health, and human health. This ultimately resulted in him founding the Regenerative Agriculture Association of South Africa to advance regenerative agriculture in the region and the Food Club Hub, an application to assist in the creation of a regenerative food chain via food clubs. Andrew is a director of the Grass-Fed Association of South Africa and Cultivating Carbon, a carbon company looking to secure carbon credits for farmers changing to regenerative agriculture. He joins us now live from Cape Town.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you clearly. Welcome, Andrew. Thank you so much for joining the summit.
I can't hear you guys. There we are. I can hear you again. Hi, it's a great privilege to be here. I'm not going to try and navigate this technology and share what I want to share. Can you see that?
Yes, perfectly. Thank you, Andrew.
Okay, great. Let me get on with it then. So yes, I am going to speak to you about regenerative agriculture. I was asked to speak about future farmers, and I firmly believe we need to change the way we farm. If you look at our history of agriculture, which started roughly 10,000 years ago, it's really a story of turning soil into dirt. Soil, a living substance that does so much for us, to dirt, just sand, that really does very little. And every civilization that has gone before us has collapsed by destroying its soil. For the first time, we're doing this on a global scale. We can't move to a new area because we're farming in the same way everywhere. Soils, then we are going to end up with environmental collapse. If we look at agriculture, industrial agriculture, the dominant form of agriculture on the planet today, it really is a history of war on our planet. It is estimated that we've lost half of the plants in the last 10,000 years. We have half as many plants on the planet. We're involved in the 6th mass extinction event, as we have destroyed diversity. We've had massive soil erosion and soil depletion. We have atmospheric pollution with carbon and various other greenhouse gases going into the atmosphere. We have water pollution, primarily with nitrogen going into our waters and creating dead zones. We have poisoning. Massive amounts of poisoning are applied every year across the globe. And this is leading to massive problems with, for instance, the bee population. There's been an enormous decline in animal welfare as we have taken animals off farms and broken those ecosystems, but also put these animals into factories in order to make so-called cheap food. And we've also had, coupled with this, rural poverty, as money has been taken from the farmers through to agribusiness. Now, at the core of us is soil, and soil does so much more for us than merely grow our food. It cleans our water, It stores our water, it regulates floods, it cleans our air, it holds 25% of the world's biodiversity, it stabilizes our climate, and you'll hear more on that later, it cycles our nutrients, and that's just a short list. There are many other roles that it plays. So as a species, how are we doing when it comes to looking after our soil? The answer, that picture probably gives you a clue, is not very well. Every year we lose 75 billion tons of topsoil. Now that doesn't really mean much. It's such a big figure we can't really visualize it. So in a South African context, I'm going to bring it down to more easy things to understand. It's our single biggest export in terms of weight. We export 13 tons of topsoil per hectare per year. To make that really understandable, for every ton of mealies we produce, we lose 3 tons of topsoil. Now, you don't have to be a soil scientist to realize that that is not a healthy situation. And we really need to be applying our minds to stopping this. But in the Free State today, one of our main row crop mealie production areas, only 3.5% of the farmers practice no-till. The United States is, for want of a better description, the sort of headquarters of industrial agriculture. And these are just some stats of what has happened over the last century or 70 years. We've lost between 50 and 70% of our soil organic matter in the process of depleting our soils. In 1940, we used 1 calorie of fossil fuel energy to make 2.3 calories of food energy. In 2010, that equation had become 10 calories of fossil fuel energy to produce 1 calorie of food energy. You don't have to be an economist to work out that that is going rapidly in the wrong direction and that that is not sustainable. On roughly the same area, nitrogen fertilizer use has increased 3 times since 1960. Phosphorus use twice, and pesticide use 3 times. Industrial agriculture defends this track record by saying that it has to feed the world. They seem to forget that we live on a finite planet and we can't just carry on sourcing external inputs into our farming. So let's look at the stats of industrial agriculture feeding the world. The United Nations tells us that 70% of the world is fed by small farms. The figure, as you've just heard in 2 different presentations, in Africa is 80%. The United States is the world's largest corn producer, producing roughly 1/3 of the world's corn, but only 15% of that enormous crop goes to humans. 42% goes to ethanol production. And for the farmers. Farm income has been flat since 1960. Debt has increased 14 times, and it's not a great environment for investment. Return on investment has decreased 3 times since 1960. So it appears the only thing industrial agriculture is feeding is itself. And this graph from Canada shows how that massive blue area has grown over the years. And the green area, the area of farmer income, has shrunk in relation to that massive blue area. The only reason this is able to happen is because of a lack of true cost accounting. If we accounted for all the fossil fuel inputs, the cost of diversity loss, the cost of soil loss, the cost of pollution, and the true cost of ecosystem collapse, this would not be able to continue. So We need to feed the world, apparently, with this agriculture that destroys its land. The other argument is that it produces cheap food. And the only reason it's cheap is because, as I've said, the true cost is not calculated. And then on top of that, we have to calculate the medical costs of this cheap food that is produced. Here, coming back to Africa, for the last 15 years, the Alliance for a Green Revolution in Africa has spent more than $1 billion promoting the Green Revolution, industrial agriculture in Africa. This has been a massive failure. Over 15 years, they have not, by their own parameters that they set out, achieved this. Smallholder farmers cannot afford to operate on this high input farming. Industrial agriculture is debt farming. So not only do you have to know how to farm, you have to be able to manage enormous amounts of debt. Smallholder farmers cannot manage this sort of volume of debt. The result has been, in those 13 countries, more hunger, not less. The other thing is that if you look at the United States and Europe and various other parts of the world, industrial agriculture survives because of subsidies. Enormous government subsidies are spent in order to keep farmers producing in this way. So soil and politics are closely related. And if you look at this diagram in the middle, you can see why, because soil is life. So we have been on this journey of turning our soil into dirt, and it starts off with a loss of organic matter. It ends up with broken ecosystems and civil unrest. If you look at the moment, and if you've paid any attention to the news over the last year, all of these features of broken ecosystems, floods, droughts, struggling farmers are happening in North America, they're happening in Europe, they're happening in Australia, they're happening in South Africa. And if you go a step further to when the land has deteriorated further in countries like Syria, which used to be part of the Fertile Crescent, where agriculture was discovered 10,000 years ago, well, there's now perpetual civil unrest. On the other side of the equation, we need to focus on turning our dirt back into soil. Unfortunately, nature is a powerful ally in this. We need to get our organic matter back in and clean our water, clean our air, and have functioning ecosystems. Only then will we have stable politics. There's a great quote that says, "We owe our existence to 6 inches of topsoil and the fact that it rains." And while that's true, that's once again focused on the very narrow definition of soil being about food production. Soil is not just about food production. Many of our extremely important cycles on the planet pass through our soils. And when we touch these soils, we have the power to break these cycles. And these cycles are responsible for creating the stable environment we need for humans to survive on the planet. And by damaging the soils, we break these cycles. So in the middle, we have soil, which 605 million farmers across the world touch every day. The much spoken about carbon cycle, where we have put too much carbon into the atmosphere, much of that having been released from agricultural soils, is broken. This has also resulted, along with that loss in biomass, of a break in the small water cycle, which also has a part of its cycle in the soil. So it's very important, and it's crucial that we look after it. At the core of all of this soil and its interaction with these cycles lies photosynthesis. We need to maximize photosynthesis, and whenever we farm in such a way that leaves bare soil, we are achieving exactly the opposite. If you look at this diagram, a quick overview of photosynthesis, we have sun and we have CO2 coming into the plant, we have water and minerals coming up the plant, and this is how photosynthesis happens. That's a very well-known process. But what is less known is that there is transpiration that takes place. We know that there's oxygen that is given off, and people often refer to our forests as our lungs. But this transpiration has another very important factor. That is the part that drives the small water cycle. And when we reduce photosynthesis, we reduce that transpiration. And then secondly, when plants are healthy, they are giving off exudates, sugars, carbon-based sugars into the soil, and they're trading those. Carbon in the soil is the currency of the soil. And some of that carbon stays in the soil, and this is how our soils become sinks for carbon. When we have functional photosynthesis, we will be able to take carbon out of the sky and put it into the soil. So as the previous speaker alluded to, we have a problem. How do we produce more that every year we have less soil, less productive soil, and ecosystem collapse? The answer is that we have to go back to farming with nature and not against nature. We have to stop killing the nature that feeds our system. We have to allow the soil microbiology to provide the nutrients to our plants rather than man-made chemicals. We have to allow nature and healthy plants to provide the resilience rather than man-made chemicals. We need to allow those crucial stabilizing cycles to return to normal functionality. So, regenerative agriculture. What does regenerative mean? Well, if you look up the definition of regenerative, it is to evolve increased capacity. And when we look at that in terms of agriculture, it's all about the soil. And we need to work with our soil and produce food in such a way that we increase the capacity of our soils. And a quick overview of the basic soil principles of regenerative agriculture. At the heart lies healthy soil biology. In very brief, simple terms, the bacteria and fungi in the soil that make the soil the living entity that it is. We need to protect them, and the way we do that is by minimizing the disturbance of the soil, by minimum tillage, by not digging, and by not spraying chemicals. We need to give them cover to keep them protected from the wind, the sun, and the rain. And most of our agriculture leaves our soil bare. We need to feed them a diversity of crops. Monocultures are one of the greatest disasters of modern agriculture. Massive fields feeding its soil with only one type of food. It's cornflakes for breakfast, lunch, and supper every day. I was speaking about photosynthesis earlier. We need to keep a living root in the soil. The only way that soil biology can be fed is by photosynthesis and those carbon-based sugars going into the ground. If you have no roots growing in your soil, then you're not feeding them. And we need to reintroduce livestock back on our farms. Before the invention of modern fertilizer, we had to have functioning ecosystems on our farms to keep them fertile. And when we invented fertilizer, we removed the cows into factories, the sheep and the chickens, and we need to get them back onto the farms. We need to view our farmers across the world as restorers. Every day, they touch 50% of the Earth's land surface. Our farmers are not the enemy, as many people say. We need to look upon them as the solution. We need to turn our farmers into the restorers of our soil and the restorers of our ecosystem. If we don't do this, the soil loss will be catastrophic. And the ultimate result of that will be environmental collapse. In our future, in massive biodiversity loss. We need to lower the external inputs involved in our food production. We need to lower the carbon footprint of our food production. We need to reduce our soil loss and regenerate our soils. And we need to halt biodiversity and make our farms diverse once again. We can only do these things by placing soil at the center of our agriculture. The future farmer has to be both an environmentalist and a farmer. I was at a conference last week, and I was told by one of the farmers in the audience that I was an environmentalist, he was a farmer, and these were two different things. Well, I'm afraid unless we can see that those two things have to be intertwined, our future is very bleak. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Andrew Addington, sugarcane and cattle farmer from KwaZulu-Natal. Andile, I must say, the day has been going well. Thank you so much for everyone who's tuned in. And you've just joined us. Welcome once again to the Pan-African Summit on Youth in Sustainable Agriculture, proudly brought to you by Food for Mzansi and foodforafrica.com. This event is, of course, proudly powered by Access Bank. And we'll be going into our first panel discussion shortly with Lucinda Dordley, the head of news at foodforafrica.com.
When you have access, your possibilities are endless. With Access, it's a small trip from Ekoneni to Ekona office, from cook sisters to cuisine, from a toll gate to a boarding gate. When you have access, it becomes that much simpler to go from that call center to calling the shots, from the bottom of the food chain to the top of the corporate ladder, from finding what suits you to a boardroom full of suits, all waiting to change the world with you. When you have access, you go from trying to get time to them making time, from Excel presentations to presentations about how you've excelled, from catching a bouquet to a weekend Phuket. You can take them from preschool to mid-school when you have access. It is not opportunity that makes dreams worth dreaming. It's the access, because access makes it possible. Access Bank, more than banking.
Thank you so much, Access Bank, for powering us with this event. Thank you so much. It's now time for our panel discussion, first facilitated by Lucinda Dordley. She's the head of news at foodforafrica.com, and she'll be joined on stage by Mbali Noko. But we have quite an extensive panel today, Andile.
Indeed. I'll start by introducing Dominic Nyasulu. Dominic Nyasulu has represented Malawi on major global platforms and climate negotiations, including the recent United Nations COP26 summit in Scotland. He is a proponent of climate and environmental justice and also serves as the national coordinator of Malawi's Youth Network on Climate Change. At national level, he works with civil society platforms in policy-related engagements, notably around his home country's climate change management policy, among others.
Our other speaker also joining us virtually is Moyowa Indoyo. He's a Nigerian-based vegetable farmer. He specializes in the production of tomatoes, lettuce, cucumber, cabbages, and sweet corn. As the founder of the Raise a Farmer initiative, he aims to empower youth and pyramid producers. In the last 9 months alone, he has trained 52 Ikite State youth on the business of vegetable farming. Now that's impressive, Andile.
Munya Chikevo stands at the forefront of horticulture farming in Harare, Zimbabwe. He farms with vegetables on a commercial scale in Mashonaland, East Province. As a future-focused agronomist, he furthermore consults for various agricultural organizations and companies. Also, he is a member of Zimbabwe Agricultural Society.
Also joining us here at the venue is Mbali Noko. She's the CEO of Green Terrace Farm outside of Johannesburg, producing high-value vegetable crops for leading retailers and markets in South Africa. She's an award-winning commercial farmer, entrepreneur, professional speaker, and popular columnist for Food for Mzansi, also part of our family. Prior to establishing her agribusiness, she was the co-owner of a talent organization which headhunted engineers and artisans for the manufacturing, engineering, and chemical industries.
Known as Mr. Agriculture on Twitter, Rogers Keowa is a multi-award winning farmer and social media influencer on a mission to end hunger. He advocates for greater inclusion of youth and women in his home country, Kenya. As the founder of Agri-Biz Africa, he has previously worked for the Michigan State University in Nairobi, as well as the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations.
Lucinda, over to you.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our panel. Okay.
Good morning. My name is Dominic Nyasuru. I'm the national coordinator for an organization called National Youth Network on Climate Change, based here in Malawi. I think we all know that the estimated impacts of both historical and the future, climate change on cereals, for example, crops will be really impacted by climate change, but also there will be a reduction in the production on the same. Projections are that, for example, cereals crop production will be reduced by almost 20%, but also crops like maize will be reduced by almost 60% by 2040 if the current trends of climate change impact is to go abide. So what it means that under the Paris Agreement as well, countries are supposed to work entirely in a collaborative way so that they address emissions and also maintain the global temperature increase below 1.5 or worst scenario maybe 2 degrees Celsius. But I think if you look at the impact, it will continue to actually put pressure on the agricultural sectors. And there is evidence, especially from where I'm coming, Malawi, that with the Idai that we experienced in 2015, most of the farmers lost their lives, lost their properties, sometimes drought, floods, pest diseases, and and that has a negative impact on the welfare or well-being of a farmer. And continued climate change impacts will also have an effect on the economy because our agriculture is agro-based. Recently, the government launched our Agenda 2063, and it has 3 components. But agriculture is one of the priority areas that our vision is invested by young people. And the young people themselves are, abandoning agriculture, I think because of, the impacts that we are seeing. They have seen that agriculture is no longer productive, that can engage or employ more farmers. So there are more challenges. Even if we can produce, I think there is no a strategic investment in young people and agriculture as a sector. And also the investment in absence of the policy, which means that it makes so tough to achieve the meaningful youth participation in the sector, despite that young people are in majority. But also, most importantly, women forms part of the majority of the labor force in the sector. However, there are some emerging opportunities in the agriculture sector, especially young people, because majority of young people, they don't have employment, they're not employed, which means that the sector presents an opportunity for young people to engage into agribusiness for economic opportunities, but also socio-economic development. But then there are so many concepts that are coming in to address the challenges that I've mentioned. One such important concept is climate smart agriculture, which is very, very important. We all understand that perhaps a concept cannot address every challenge that a community or maybe a sector is facing. But I think to larger extent, it is able at least to fill the gap where necessary in terms of the needs of the community. And one such important concept is the climate smart agriculture, which has multiple benefits. But most importantly, the three key components that is very, very critical and that we need to understand and push. One such benefit of climate smart agriculture is that it actually enhances sustainability and increases, productivity and also income when we are, adopting it from community. But also it has an advantage in terms of enhancing resilience and also climate, stresses. It is able to actually develop resilience, but also address some of the stresses that are associated with climate shocks as well. But also, lastly, climate smart agriculture represents an opportunity to be able to address and reduce greenhouse, emissions through mitigations and other adaptation measures. But this specifically, it should be based on the needs of the community. I've already said that sometimes concept somewhere can work and somewhere cannot work. But in a community where we're working, we have tried to come up with the needs, and we have come up to test these technologies, and they're working based on the community needs. And young people are making sure that they're part and parcel of this process in terms of building the capacity of smallholder farmers to adopt, to understand and adopt, and being able to practice. And we have done that through the formation of what we call youth-led community of practice as far as climate smart agriculture is concerned. So we are using those smart farms as a case study to upscale, to engage the youth, to have a practical example on the issues that we're talking about, but also raising awareness in terms of how young people, especially young farmers, can practice it and also maximize the potential that the concept can bring in the sector, but also, on the other hand, addressing the challenges that we're facing. And lastly, it's about also engaging the government in the evidence-based advocacy. So we are using these case studies to generate evidence and engage government so that there is a sustainable or the youth engagement strategy, especially looking at how much government should invest in climate smart agriculture. But also, we understand that in line with the recognition of the concept in our strategy, I think that's key for us to engage in an engagement with government through evidence-based advocacy. And it's important that the government, they're coming up to actually invest in the agricultural sector. But I think the missing link is that we don't have a clear strategy on how young people can be engaged in agribusiness, but also in climate smart agriculture related initiative. It's workable. And just to summarize, one of the key examples that we are also trying to include in our programming as far as climate smart agriculture is concerned is the use of smart technologies. So we use college students so that they can practice their class knowledge into practice. They can put class knowledge into practice. How? By engaging into science research in terms of generating data. And this data, we use very simple tools, like, for example, probes, soil probes, where we can determine soil health. And this is important element as far as decision-making processes by smallholder farmers is concerned, but also the use of smartphone to generate and disseminate information to rural farmers. So combining with that, I think we should be able to understand, but also disseminate information and guide the farmer in the very rightful manner at the right time. So I think it's working, but I think now, how do we upscale in terms of having those technologies so that even farmers themselves, they should be able to have those technologies and should be able to taming the soil health, of their land, but also being able to be informed in terms of what type of crops they're going to plant and when, and also in terms of engaging into the advisory services through the interpretation of weather-related information. So I think that's some of the things I wanted to share, but there are so many things beyond climate smart agriculture. So maybe finally, it's an issue to say that who is going to feed more than maybe 12 billion people by 2020, maybe 2040 or around that. So which means that coupled with effects of climate change that we are facing, then we need technologies that could address these complex challenges as far as agriculture is concerned to attain food and nutrition security. Thank you so much.
Delving straight into it with Mbali over here. Mbali, you started Green Terrace in 2016, and you're also quite known for lauding your sustainable farming practice. Why did you decide to go into sustainable farming versus more traditional methods?
Right, thanks so much, Lucinda. I think in the beginning it was just a matter of trying things out because I didn't study agriculture. I'm a first-generation farmer, and so when you typically go into the industry, you take what people teach you, right? And the joy about farming is that you will kind of know where you're going by actually doing the farming. So now when I purchased my new farm and built it up, my intention was I have to farm sustainably to be a sustainable business. And what I mean by that, and I think sometimes the word or the term sustainability is thrown around quite loosely. For me, sustainability directly on the farm is, can the business continue to run season after season, right? Am I setting up operations and making strategic decisions that my business will be there tomorrow? So that's from a business perspective, from a holistic overview. But directly going into production, I had lost a lot of revenue by farming in open land, through excessive rain, through excessive hail, cold spells, and yeah, that could set you back quite a lot, financially. So for me now, changing the strategy of Green Terrace to say, we're going to farm completely undercover. I'm going to purchase a farm that is strategically located close to very, very lucrative markets, including export markets. And I am going to embrace technology in the practices, in my farming production practices. That is what sustainability is to me. And I believe if a farmer starts to apply that thinking in their business, that is really how, firstly, you'll unlock a lot of opportunities, but more so, you'll start to see where you're going as a business, and you can start to grow, and measure certain things that you do in your business so that you can improve in the following season. So this is a reason, fundamental reason why I just thought, let us farm sustainably. Although, yes, we do use biologicals, in our production practices, but also there's still some conventional farming practices that needs to take place, and yeah, I think at the end of the day, it was just the reason to farm sustainably was to say, I still want my business to operate for many years to come, and how do I start that? When you start a business, you must think of the exit in mind, and so it was really about sustaining the longevity of my business to ensure that I keep creating employment, I keep servicing my clients, and I do what I do every day.
Okay, so Rogers is known on Twitter as Mr. Agriculture, and he is very vocal about his mission to end world hunger. Within that framework, Rogers, what do you think are the sustainable frameworks and policies that need to come into place to actually, fill the gap for food security and end world hunger?
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me. I'm joining in from Kenya. First of all, a brief introduction. I'm a farmer as well. So basically what we do here in Kenya, we operate a model farm whereby we do trainings. We try and engage young people. We try make them get involved in agriculture. We also engage sector players such as the government and also input suppliers and everybody in the across the value chain. What we want to do is we want to really change the perception of the young people towards farming, because first of all, the young people keep saying that farming is meant for the old, farming is meant for the unschooled. So first, we want to really change the perception of the young people towards these amazing field of agribusiness. So basically that's what we do currently. On government, we try and engage the government. We try and champion for the rights of the young people within the sector, because we realize that most young people are really not engaged in the field of agribusiness. From even there, when a big part of those really making up these important policies for the young people and even for the entire public on agriculture matter.
Mayowa, you farm specifically with vegetables, such as cucumber, lettuce, sweet corn. What is the pronounced impact of climate change on your veggies? And have you had to adjust your farming practices kind of to mitigate this? Testing.
Just find out if we can hear you. If maybe someone can send them a test.
Munya, you are known for being at the forefront of horticulture in Zimbabwe. What, in your opinion, is the role of horticulture in fighting the battle against climate change?
Hello, everyone. Can I go on? What I do believe about horticulture, the use of pesticides that do not kill bees, so that we have continuity in generations to come that can use the natural resources readily available from what you give. We also advocate farmers to specialize in different crops so that there is no overuse of a certain pesticide or any other chemical, so that we do not exhaust the soils that we have. So in sustainability, then the most important aspect of all is to be able to use resources, anticipating a better use in the future for other generations to come.
Mbali, so your crops are sort of lauded for, being high quality, and you also access a bunch of, premium retail markets because of the quality of your crops. Do you think that your farming practice, particularly with the way that you go about it, has allowed you to unlock such a large market?
Lucinda, I think it's all about your strategy at the end of the day, right? You're going to business knowing who you're going to service. And when you're going to start engaging and interacting with your clients, you need to find that sweet spot for them that causes a headache, right? And if you can solve that headache, that's how you'll know that you continuously remain in business and be their favorite supplier, so to say. So for us deciding to farm high-value crops is because we wanted to niche, right? We wanted to also find that sweet spot for our clients where you have to look at the landscape of all their suppliers, right? As much as we're all farmers in the industry, you need to also identify who your competitors are and also work together in different regions, right? So for example, I know within Green Terrace we farm peppers, and I know in certain seasons, a lot of my clients, let's say around the period of February to August, a lot of my clients will get their peppers from farmers based in the northern regions, right? And then coming through to September and all the way till May, they depend on the Highveld region. So as much as Green Terrace might be a competitor to other businesses and other farms, for us is to say, we decided on this high value crop, yes, so that we can strategically position ourselves with our clients so that we get continuous and repetitive business. But at the same time, we know what problem we're solving for our customer, meaning they cannot procure or source consistently and reliably peppers during that, the Highveld region seasons, that being September to May. So what is our value offering as Green Terrace is then to produce that type of crop that could be available for them. You know, and that's just how we went about it, or I went about it in deciding what type of crop I'm going to farm and how I would position myself in front of my clients.
Rogers, going back over to you, you have experience, you know, with the Michigan State University and also working with the Food and Agricultural Organization of the United Nations. You also very strongly advocate for the inclusion of women and youth in agriculture. How do you think that the inclusion of these two specific groups, what is sort of the hope that they represent, and how do you think that their inclusion is going to drive forward agriculture?
First of all, thank you so much for that question. And first of all, I would really want to say that the inclusion of young people and the women into the field of agribusiness is very key, since this is first of all the most energetic group in our bracket. So I would always say that and also the youth are the most innovative, because you find it that every other young person would really want to learn, is really open to learning, is really open to knowing more. So agriculture would really need these young people because of the innovation. Also, we also need the continuity, because we've had farmers who've been doing this for the longest time possible. These are our parents. Our parents, I wouldn't say that not that our parents would really be there to farm for eternity, but we would really need these young people to get into farming, because these aging group of farmers, in our country here in Kenya, we would say that the average age of a farmer is 60 years old. We really need to bring this age down to around 40 or even 30, whereby we have the most energetic team of young people who can really take part in farming. On women, I would really say that if you go to the rural areas, every other place here in Kenya or any other country, even across the continent of Africa, you'll find that the most people who are engaged in the production stage, whereby they till the land, they grow the crop, they really take care of the crop from the initial stages, whereby the planting is done until harvesting, are women. And we really need to engage these women because they are the key producers in the field of agribusiness. Thank you.
Mbali, back over to you. The Highveld region in particular has been experiencing, you know, quite a number of changes in terms of the climate that it usually experiencing colder temperatures at night and all of those sorts of things. What are the ways in which you've had to recalibrate your farming practice to sort of, you know, mitigate the ill effects that this could have on your crops? And do you predict that it's going to be a much larger problem for you in future?
Yeah, I think, when they say a farmer is resilient, I think, we have to hold that statement quite true. Because when you farm, you kind of know what crop you want to farm, what seasons, etc. I think the things like climate change, these are things that are inevitable, As a farmer, you have to sort of sweet dance with climate, right? Cold temperatures, very hot temperatures. It is what it is, right? We cannot take that away. So I think as a farmer, you just have to be resilient and adaptive. So as much as you might have a strategy in place for your farming operations and the clients that you service and the crops that you're going to farm, you must be able to innovate your business and tweak your production practices in times such as high temperatures or very, very cold temperatures, and also when you consider things like drought, how do you mitigate those risks? So I think as a farmer, always be resilient, but also identify the risks prior to doing any major investments in your farm, and this comes naturally. I think as a farmer, you always have to have the risks in mind and find solutions that will always help you mitigate, because climate change is not going anywhere. It's been around for many years. It's just now we're experiencing it so much more severely than the previous seasons. And the resilient farmer and the farmer that is able to adapt and be able to tweak their practices and remain afloat, whether you are in horticulture, in grains, in livestock, etc., that is a farmer that will remain in business for many years to come. So I think just in summary, to answer your question, I just think just be able to adapt and be innovative, because climate change is not going anywhere. We will experience these things in many times to come, but how do you mitigate those risks and find solutions to those challenges?
Back to Munya. So again, you are at the forefront of horticulture in Zimbabwe. What is your opinion on how the role of horticulture can help mitigate climate change and fight against it? Okay, it seems that we've lost Munya.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear
you. Okay, I was saying we have introduced aquaponics, hydroponics, and integrated farming techniques, which include greenhouse technologies and open field integration, whereby farmers use different methods of farming so that we can continue to produce at the same time, so that there is no waste and there is no leakage in the resources that are readily available. So we have also introduced solar systems in most of the farmers who are working off the grid, so that we can make use of the solar that is available, so that we continue to produce with the least possible combination of costs. Am I audible?
Yes, I can hear you.
We can hear you.
Okay, so I was saying with the integrated farming techniques that we're using now, we encourage everyone to use different farming techniques so that we continue to produce with the least possible amount of resources available. So if you're doing integrated farming using aquaponics and hydroponics, you can as well do fish, which can be a supplement to your crops. So in the event that you want to have readily available nitrogen from your fish, you do your fish, and the fish poop will work as natural occurring nitrogen, which is very much sustainable, and there is limited use of chemical usages in terms of fertilizers and all. So it's somewhat organic and beneficial to the populace. So when you produce using that sort of system, it means you are going to produce food which can be taken by anyone from all walks of life. So most uptown buyers now, they prefer something which is organic. But if you tend to use this type of production system, it means you can cater for those ones who want organic and those ones who can take something with synthetic fertilizers. So in a bid to make sure we use the resources that are available and capture the whole market, we've also adapted. There's adaptation of our solar techniques, so that when it gets hot and the temperatures continue to rise, we will take advantage of the solar energy and convert it into water being pumped from the solar systems. So in Zimbabwe now, we have introduced something called the solar center pivot. So with the rise in global temperatures, the solar panels will convert energy from the sun. So it's now more of adapting into usage of what is readily available. So apart from complaining and succumbing to the effects of increase in temperatures and changes in climatic conditions, we are trying to mitigate by coming up with ways which can help farmers to continue to irrigate regardless of power cuts, regardless of the heat being excessive. So the solar center pivot will be there to help most of the farmers off the grid, and those struggling with erratic power cuts from the suppliers. Like in our country, most horticultural farmers succumb to power cuts and excessive heat. So in a bid to balance off the two, the solar center pivots now come in as a cushion to help farmers to continue to do watering and create food sufficiency on the market. So there's no outcry that there's no sufficient food on the market because the increasing temperatures and we are receiving little rainfall compared to previous years. So these are the mitigation strategies that you are advocating so that there is continuity in food production. So in that vein, there's also sustainability in terms of what's needed by the country in terms of food need and food production. So we will try by all means to strike a balance using mitigation strategies.
My next question is directed at you again, Munya. So there's a number of factors that impact, the health of soil. This can range from, sort of moisture content, the heat that is imparted onto it. But within that frame, this also can affect the way that crops grow. Are there any crops that you've noticed in particular that are being impacted by lowering quality of soil?
Yeah, most of the plants are responding to soil health. So what I do believe is most of the crops in horticulture, they respond to that. They respond to the pH levels, they respond to the fertilizer levels, they respond to the acidity and the soil fertility. So in most cases, we have advocated to do organic supplement to our soils. So by organic supplement, we use readily available manure. So there's a usage of compost manure, which we can use dry matter or even wet matter. So if you're using dry matter, use things like leaves, grass, all those dry items that you can pile and create a compost that can help you have a good soil health boost. So in most cases, most farmers, they do cattle, most farmers, they do chickens, and others in poultry, all different sorts of animals that are kept. So we recommend most of our farmers to take that fully decomposed manure and add to their soils, so that soil health at every stage of the goal is catered for. Then as well, there is the use of new chemicals like kelp max, a whole lot from the fertilizer side. They're coming with things that will help the biosoil to continue to give us good soil health. But as well, in terms of adaptability, many genetics from different companies across the world, they are coming up with varieties that are tolerant to excessive heat and tolerant to certain conditions in the field. So two aspects that will help most farmers to continue to produce at a profitable level is to encourage the use of organic manure in terms of compost manure or even fully decomposed animal residue. So animal residue like cattle manure, chicken manure, some will decompose from the piggery side, so that there is continuous replenishing of nutrients based on the soil. So soil health is something very pertinent for the growth of all. There is no other crop which is better than the other. So if we're looking at crops as a whole, all the crops need good soil health for them to thrive and reach a certain yield level. So my recommendation to most farmers and to my farm is to use that readily available organic matter. Then as well to use new varieties which are coming. Most varieties, they are adaptable.
Much for that. Before we close off, are there any closing remarks from the panelists?
I'd like to answer my question. Can you hear me? I'd like to answer my question.
I think go ahead.
Great. I apologized earlier. My internet went off. I was asked what my experience was or has been with climate crisis. So, and I wanted to say that in last year, for the first time, we planted cabbages and lettuce on commercial scale. The first time it was done in 80 states. I mean, before that time, we had always thought that it could be grown only in the northern part of Nigeria. And we set up two farms, a 3-plot farm and a 1-acre farm. The 3-plot farm was strategically positioned by a stream that never goes dry. And the 1-acre farm had no stream or water source close by. So we thought that for that period, we were going to enjoy rain for another 3 months period, and there will be no need for us to bother about the plants getting water. But suddenly the rain stopped. Of course, what that meant was for the 1-acre farm, it was a complete failure because the rain suddenly stopped due to climate crisis. And for the 3-plot farm, we had to resort to go into the stream, fetch water to water the plants. And of course, it was really stressful, but at the end of the day, we were able to get some results. Of course, not the kind of result that we wanted, but at least we got something out of the 3-plot farm. The cabbages did well, the lettuce did well, not to the volume we wanted, but at least we got something out. So going into the future, having that consideration of the impact of climate change on agriculture, I started teaching other farmers on how to prepare or adapt to the crisis that is ahead of us already. That is in our hands and we can't really do much. And then I started teaching and I started setting up farms. And my own farms, I was intentional about ensuring that irrigation system was in place. And because of the heat, because of the level of the heat, we started ensuring that we also incorporated mulching, whether it was synthetic or ensuring that the grass that were cut from the farm were not burnt, but instead were rather converted into mulching materials to ensure that the moisture content in the soil remained at least for a period of time before they get dried up. So that's the effect. That's how I was hit with climate change last year. Coming into this year, of course, it impacted on how the methods that we adapted to growing, and it's been better. The effect, of course, for this year is that last year we completely lost investment. For this year, there's been drastic drop in output. So where we naturally would have gotten two tons of tomatoes I'm going to stay with tomatoes, where we're getting just 1 ton of tomatoes at use of global best practice for production. And then, of course, for farmers who do not understand global best practice, they're getting way less yields from their farms. So again, that's what it is. That's the method we've adopted. And I want to say thank you for having me on this platform. I apologize for the internet mess up earlier. Thank you very much.
Mayowa, I also have another question for you. So in your work, thus far you've worked with more than 164 small-scale farmers. And very often, small-scale farmers don't have the same resources available to them as larger-scale or commercial farmers. What are some of the notable challenges that small-scale farmers are currently facing? And what do you think can be done to support them?
So there's a myriad of challenges that the smallholder farmers are currently facing. First, it's the fact that, surprisingly, I realized that most of the smallholder farmers don't even understand the best practice for production. And by that, I mean for vegetable production, right? They still practice what has been passed on to them by their forefathers, and agreeing to adopt hybrid seeds is even a challenge. So, it's a whole lot. I'm doing so much to get them to see the reason they should adopt global best practice, doing so much to show them the reasons why adopting hybrid seed is more profitable than harvesting the seeds from the fruit and drying it and replanting it. So if you take that out, you find that also the smallholder farmers can't do business profitably because they also do not have a good relationship with the marketplace. And that's not far. The reason for that is this far-fetched. They are not producing what the marketplace wants. Like, the marketplace is getting to see reasons why they should, and I'm going to be, they should buy certain specifications of vegetables. They've been exposed to better specifications of vegetables, maybe by the medium-scale farmer or the top of the pyramid player in that agri space, and that's what they want. So when the smallholder farmer who's still concentrating on selling less tomatoes with more moisture content, less flesh, and that are just less than the standard that the marketplace wants, it's just normal that when they go to the marketplace, they will beg to sell their produce. And now, one of the challenges that I've also had to encounter and I'm currently dealing with is that in asking them to adopt global best practice, there are processes that needs to be followed, right? And one of the challenges we're facing right now is that less people want to do hard work. Less people want to work on the farm. So getting labor to handle this process for them at scale-up level is a difficult one. So most farmers would just rather sit with 2 plots, 3 plots, best case scenario, 1 acre, where they can by themselves manage. And that's not sustainable for business. If you're talking that the farmer should do vegetable farming or agriculture to scale. So having access to labor is a problem in Africa, is a problem in Nigeria. If I have to be specific. So these and so much more. And so, but what am I doing currently? So I'm encouraging these farmers to practice shared economy on the farm by grouping them into clusters and then getting them to co-own processes and inputs. And then at the end of the day, these farmers, based on the input that they put in, can get them out and do better businesses. So it's a whole lot we're doing. It's a whole lot we're still trying to figure out. And but then I can say that we're getting somewhere.
Okay. Thank you, everybody, for your time. We are handing back over to Dawn and Andile.
Thank you so much, Lucinda Dordley, the head of news at foodforafrica.com. Quite an impressive panel from Malawi, Kenya, South Africa, Zimbabwe, and Nigeria. Wow, talk about a Pan-African summit on youth in sustainable agriculture. Andile, I am very happy with how today is going, and I'm also looking forward to our next speaker.
Right, so should I introduce our next speaker?
Actually, no, I'm the one that's wrong. Sorry, Antile. It's been a bit of a morning. So thank you so much, Lucinda. Thank you so much. Now, home to 60% of the world's arable land, Africa has the potential to not only meet the food needs, but also to meet its own food needs, but also those of the rest of the country. Sorry, I'm just trying to find my notes. It's also one of the most important sectors on the continent, employing the majority of the population and accounting for 14% of the GDP in sub-Saharan Africa. We now change gears and introduce our next speaker. It's Kazuki Kittiako. Kazuki is the coordinator of the World Food Forum 2021 and the head of Outreach, Marketing and Reporting Unit at the Food and Agriculture Organization of United Nations. Prior to this position, he headed the Strategic Planning and Coordination Unit at the United Nations Industrial Development Organization and managed various global consultations and outreach activities. Over to you, Kazuki.
Thank you so much, Dawn and Andil. Thank you, everyone, for having me here at this important summit. Let me share my screen as I have a small presentation, and I also have later a very short video to show, but can you see the presentation?
Yes, we can see your presentation, Kazuki.
I see nodding, so I guess this is going through. So thank you very much for the kind introduction. My name is Kazuki Kittiako, and I'm the coordinator of the World Food Forum, which is a movement for the transformation of our agri-food systems. It's a global movement that was initiated this year in tandem with a major summit that was organized by the United Nations Secretary General on food system transformation. And it culminated really in a first big edition of a flagship event just now here in October, just a couple of weeks ago. And the interesting thing about the World Food Forum is that it was entirely led by youth, for youth. So the leadership here is with young people, their aspirations for the future of our food, and their idea of how we should empower youth for creating a better food future for everybody. Just very briefly, just some of the global facts that we probably all know. As I think Dawn said just before, we are really, in reality, already producing enough food to feed every man, woman, and child in the world. And at the same time, we still have 811 million people who are going hungry every day. In addition, around 650 million people are obese. And 14% of our food is lost before it even comes to the markets, and even more is wasted every day. So these are incredible facts that happened already before we're looking even at some of the more systemic global crises. Of course, we all know about pests and plagues that are going through the lands, affecting agriculture immensely, climate change and natural disasters, conflicts, and of course, very much in our minds as well, the COVID-19 pandemic, which has had a major effect on our food markets and food trade during the last 2 years. A profound and systemic transformation of agri-food systems is therefore is needed in order to nourish those additional 800 million people who are hungry today. But also, we need to look at the future, and the UN Population Fund assesses that there will be at least 2 billion additional people on Earth in 2050. That's the end of the Africa Union strategic plan. So here, we will need to be able to provide nutritious and healthy food, hopefully in a more sustainable way, to 2 additional billion people, which is, of course, calling for a dramatic transformation of our agri-food systems, globally, but also in Africa, on the African continent. So coming to this initiative, the World Food Forum, and you have perhaps seen the title of my speech is it time for an African Food Forum? I would like to give you a bit of a background here, how we came to this, to the idea of this forum, and why it was so essential that young people, youth, were not only leading it, but also addressing their peers, other youth around the world, to join hands and come together in this important transformation that we're looking at. So to address these incredibly unprecedented challenges that are facing our global agri-food systems, actionable and innovative and inclusive solutions are necessary, and we must engage and empower young people who will inherit these challenges and this future. Today's youth are more geographically mobile and technologically connected than ever before, with a vast capital of innovative and scalable solutions and ideas. Very often these are overlooked by those in power, and youth can push the transition to sustainable production and consumption patterns while driving the kind of change in mindset and in behavior that is required to achieve the sustainable development goals that we have for 2030, and also the massive challenges that we have towards 2050 with 2 billion additional people on Earth. When proactively engaged, young people have demonstrated to be the architects and innovators of their own realities and their own sectors where they are active, including during a pandemic that we have just seen with COVID-19. Already in 2017, so before the pandemic, the World Food Prize Laureate, the president of the Africa Development Bank, I see that one of the colleagues has been giving a keynote, said that the future of the African youth in particular lies in agriculture. But we will only be able to realize this future by changing the perception of young people of agriculture, turning it not only into something that is even a bit more profitable than how it is perceived at the moment, but it also needs to become cool. It needs to become attractive. It needs to become a sector that is actually a desirable area where young people want to work. And it is not only agriculture, but it is the entire food system, from farm all the way through the market to the use of and consumption of food. Therefore, empowering young people, youth globally and in particular in Africa, to become innovators and change makers is key for the sustainable transformation of our agri-food systems. This year's World Food Forum marks the beginning of a new youth-led movement that will ensure that the perspectives of youth, including young women, indigenous people, smallholder farmers, marginalized people, are heard loud and clear at the policy level. And if we look at the mission of the World Food Forum, this is a little bit a complicated slide, I have to apologize, but it's going to become much less academic in the next second. So the World Food Forum was born with a very clear mission: empowering youth for a better food future. It is an independent global network of partners created for and led by youth to spark a movement to transform the agri-food systems and achieve the sustainable development goals, including zero hunger. Since its inception, more than 75 youth partners, global youth partners from across the United Nations and also public and private institutions have associated themselves with the World Food Forum and now embody a truly youth-led forum, global youth-led forum that is inclusive and that works as a network for the transformation of our agri-food systems. Aligning with the core principles and with the outcome of the United Nations Food System Summit, the World Food Forum aims to serve as the premier platform to engage and harness the passion of youth by raising awareness, by fostering engagement, and by driving the sustainable transformation on the ground of our agri-food systems, of course. The forum has already engaged thousands of young people at this point around the world. This has been possible through the myriad of events organized across themes, including policy, which brought together youth leaders from across the world to drive sustainable change, innovation, which was really empowering youth and young startups, young entrepreneurs, agripreneurs to find groundbreaking solutions, education, using the knowledge of key drivers of systemic change, and culture. Let's not forget, food and agriculture is very much also culture, creating awareness of agri-food systems through the power of art. If I may, I would like to show you a very short video which really illustrates the journey that we went through with this World Food Forum, and which much better than me perhaps can show you also the spirit behind the forum and what the young people were thinking when they were organizing this. And then I will come to the closing remarks and also look at why it is time now for an Africa Food Forum.
We saw a problem. 811 million people are hungry. Actually, we saw many problems. The COVID-19 pandemic, 1.3 billion tons of food lost or wasted, pests, conflict, and climate change. We're adding to this global food crisis. Inheriting this world is not acceptable. We needed to take matters into our own hands. We needed to think big. We needed to disrupt the status quo. It was time for us youth to take control of our future. And for the first time, we would be in the driving seat. The FAO Youth Committee began to brainstorm. To solve these big problems, we needed something massive. But how could we get the world to listen? How could we incite action? How could we find innovative solutions? How could we transform the way we worked? And how could we build a better food future? More than an idea, we needed a movement, and we needed energy to power that movement. We knew we had energy, but we were just a few. We needed more. From every corner of the world, we needed to tap into the energy of the billions of young people around the planet. We asked, what if we could create a global platform that could empower youth everywhere? And we thought, let's do it. We have to try. The stakes were too high to let our energy go to waste. The World Food Forum was born in 2020.
Because this is not a talk, it's an idea, an insight, the building block of change. Think about it. Everything comes from an insight. Everything. This meeting was born as a fresh thought in someone's mind. Your presence here, my dear, is just a consequence of you being still enough to hear and know how to follow up on an idea. And so, if everything comes from an idea, a fresh thought, so will a new world. And you, young leaders and change makers, are here to be vessels and bring new ideas to life.
It started with a few voices speaking out, with a vision of what could be possible.
Good afternoon.
It started when people took a moment to listen. Youth leaders, musicians, scientists, influencers, experts, institutions, and business leaders heard our call. And soon, those few voices turned into a chorus, and that chorus became a roar. Our numbers quickly began to grow. We took our ideas to our colleagues. We built a website. We started hosting research competitions, startup awards, master classes, and youth consultations. It wasn't always easy. We got tired. We had moments of overwhelm, but we remained committed. The passion of our fellow volunteers renewed our energy when we got tired. We knew we could do this, and we are doing it. The 2021 World Food Forum flagship event was powered by hundreds of volunteers, dozens of partners, and reached tens of thousands of people in all regions of the world. We had more than 25 pre-events, youth roundtables, and consultations. And this past week, we hosted over 65 total sessions, including 14 masterclasses, 10 cultural experiences, 25 side events, with over 6,000 participants coming from around the world. But more, we have made a concrete difference. We found innovative research projects. We found promising startups and helped them scale up their ideas. We held a youth action assembly and came up with clear priorities and actions to transform our food systems, starting now. We hosted Junior World Food Day, making sure that no one, no matter how young, would be left behind. We have started something that is bigger than ourselves. We have created a space where change is possible, where breakthroughs can happen, and where ideas become action. We have created a place where all youth voices can be heard. In this fertile ground, we are growing the future that will nourish us all. This is the World Food Forum, powered by global youth. The movement has only just begun, so join us.
So I hope that this short video can show you a little bit what we have been doing over the last 12 months in the run-up to the first flagship event, which just happened. I think we produced really a lot of tangible results here in this first year, and we hope that that this is just the start. We have, most importantly, I think, created a space where youth voices can be heard globally, and their ideas can transform actions. This has reflected youth action has been reflected in a youth action compendium that was created, and it resulted in numerous consultations with youth groups and also at the side of global food policy at the FAO. This year's World Food Forum was able to bring together more than 25,000 people actually, and at the flagship event alone, we engaged some 8,000 young people in youth consultations. And in the coming months, the momentum, as we hope, will build, and this movement will expand more in 2022 when it is coming to the implementation of the Food Systems Summit of the Secretary General. Next year, we also hope to launch a World Food Forum Young Scientists group, which is going to create a strong scientific base amongst young people who are working in science and agri-science in particular, strengthening the youth assembly and start monitoring advances in agri-food system transformation from a young point of view, a young expert point of view. And here, of course, we hope to have a very strong African contingent at this World Food Forum Young Scientists Group. Now, the next chapter of the next step of this forum needs to be to go local, to go regional, and we hope for scaling up and nurturing solutions with young people, for young people in agri-food systems in Africa in particular. And for that, we are calling for a World Food Forum Africa chapter, perhaps an African food forum that it can be supported by initiatives and organizations such as yours, and where we can bring everyone's support to ensure that we continue this momentum across regions and the movement of young people in agri-food system transformation. The World Food Forum is truly global at this point, and we hope to work with all of you in the next chapter, which will be an African chapter, and hope to see many of these initiatives as this one looking at young people's response and interest as well in sustainable agriculture across Africa. So with this, thank you very much for your attention and for giving me this space, and back to you, Dawn and Adil.
Thank you so much, Kazuki Kittiako, for joining us today. Our next speaker is well known to the Food for Mzansi family and needs very little introduction. We now welcome Dr. Nadir Malan. He's going to unpack finding opportunities by commanding the value chain, specifically focusing on new opportunities for new farming enterprises. Now, Dr. Nadir Malan is a senior lecturer in development studies at the University of Johannesburg. He is also the convener of the Multi-Stakeholder Engagement Project, which is in Zimbabwe, Zokutla, that aims to create opportunities for urban agriculture and sustainable food systems in Soweto, South Africa. Dr. Nadir Malan, welcome to the summit, and we look forward to your contribution today.
Hello, everybody. I do hope you can hear me. And please allow me to share my screen so that I can, complete my presentation. And thank you also for Food for Mzansi for making this opportunity available. Can you guys hear me? Is everything all right?
Yes, we can hear you perfectly, Dr. Malan.
Thank you so much, Dawn, and also thank you to all the other speakers. Let me just, blurb my university, else they're going to fire me. So I really want to talk about, opportunities in the value chain. This also comes along from my career. I've changed jobs, and thank you, Dawn, for introducing me from development studies. But today I'm actually sitting at the University of Johannesburg at the Soweto campus, and I'm teaching entrepreneurship. And I'm managing the National Diploma in Small Business, and I will be transforming this to focus on the food system and also the informal sector. But I want to talk about, excuse me, I want to talk about the food value chain. And, I want to start with the first point is that farmers only, and this is a global statistic, farmers, you guys only receive at most, and in some countries like South Africa, it's down to 16, 17%. So you only receive 28% of the value, the retail value of the stuff that you produce. Now let's just ask, why is this the case? And I want to say to the youth, guys, I'm 50, I'm over the hill, I've passed halfway mark, I've done my bit, but you must watch out for us. We can lead you astray, and we can very, very easily empower you into the wrong value chains and in the wrong system. There's a reason why farmers don't get the value of their produce, and that is to do with this extremely complex food processing, distribution, and retail system that we have constructed. And farmers must understand their own role and their own responsibility in creating it like that. So it really starts with the stuff that you are producing and how are you producing these things. So if you are producing a single crop and hoping to sell it at the highest price on the market, you must understand that your buyer is going to buy it from you at their lowest price. And what also then happens is you flood the market with a singular product, like tomatoes or grains, and this is very much in the grain area that I'm speaking of, is that you're actually creating opportunities for people to process the food that you have created. And then what then happens is they can extend and increase the value, the elasticity of the food value in such a way that, that they benefit. So just take a little bit of a look at what are the value chains that you as a farmer are playing in. And this is the challenge for the youth. You as the youth, you should not be following us and taking these value chains and the established retail food production and distribution system as the truth. That is exactly the system that you need to change. If you don't change the system, you will not achieve sustainability. So what actually happens is the product life of food is extended, and it creates value outside the farm. And what then happens is the farmer is a price taker. They are producing food without any unique value proposition, and they are basically selling stuff at the lowest possible price. They think it's the highest price they can get, but they are selling things at an absolutely low price. And the low price is created by this idea that we must produce volumes at all costs. So just remember, you as a farmer, the more you produce, the greater the incentives you create for others to take your produce further and actually create the real value, which you will not get. So think of a chip in a restaurant. I mean, a restaurant's the wrong word. A takeaway restaurant. Compare the price of a single chip to the price of a potato. And that chip is worth more on the market than the potato. So what does this mean for the farmer? So I just want to say, you farmers, you have two choices. The first choice you have, and you can do that, is to become an input supplier for a processor. And it could be also, a marketer or a retailer. And I'm asking you, does this pay, what you are putting in it? Does this actually really account for the land value that you are using, for the labor, for everything, the ecological impact? And the answer is probably not. So what is your alternative? What can you do as a business development strategy? And guys, it is the system that has to change. It's all great. You can get your ticket and go to Rome or Glasgow and be on stage and dress well and do all of those things. Those things are not going to create opportunities. Those things actually take away the opportunity because of the carbon emissions in the travel and the costs, which are astronomical. I have stopped traveling. So what can you do? You have to engage with your value chains as a farmer. If you don't engage with your value chains, you are selling everything at farm gate price, which is the absolutely lowest price possible for your produce. And it is often, especially if you're a small farmer, that price will be lower than your production costs. And those prices are determined by large producers. So you got to have to think about this. There are large producers out there, and they don't even have to be in your country. They could be in another country. They actually determine the price that you get for your stuff. So the only way to get away from that is to start commanding your value chain and creating new opportunities for you as a farmer. So think of your local market. So you're a farmer, you grow food. All the people, all of them in your area eat every day, at least twice. Some eat once, and that's a problem. So what are they eating? Are they eating the same things that you produce, which you then sell in the urban area, and then someone in the urban area then imports back to your local area? Can you not see that that is actually where the problem lies? That is where the cause of the low price that you get lies, and also the dysfunctional diets of the people. Because if you are eating food that's traveling all across the country and all across the world, you are not going to eat the best food. And the best food is very, very simple. It's fresh food. That's it. There's no other processing that can ever beat fresh food. Don't even go there. So what you have to do is you have to start bypassing your distributors. You have to create your own value, and you have to really simply start thinking about this. From milling to packaging, you have to even go as far as to understand your farm as a farm that should be a polyfarm, in the sense that it should be delivering multiple products with multiple processes, instead of just a singular crop and a monocrop, which really is a crop that you are producing to get the lowest possible price for. So what I'm saying, and I'm going to explain this a little bit in my talk, is that you really need to think about creating an ecosystem of enterprises and entrepreneurial activity around your farm. Your farm has such absolute value that you just simply cannot use the farm to produce only a monocrop. Think to the opportunity to create niche products. And I'm not talking about funny artichokes and funny crops that you will sell to very, very rich people overseas at a very high price. That is not what I'm talking about. That is also not going to cut the cake here. You have to understand that you sit in a system, and that system is made up of the people around your farm who also eat. And it is in the system where the dysfunctionalities of the food system can emerge. So you need to understand that you, and this is what I'm saying, you really need to consider to create local markets around your farm and local products, and you have to add the value to these local products. If you do not do that, I do not see that you would make it as a farmer, except if you buy all the farms in your area and you exclude those people from working in it and you take over the farms. And that is just not going to happen. So let's think, what is the other resource you can draw on? Think about your farm within a circular economy. So a regenerative farm will bypass costly inputs. We had someone talk about fertilizer. I want to know, how much do you pay for that fertilizer? And let me just tell you a secret. In South Africa, we import the big South Africa, which produces huge amounts of food. We import 80% of all the chemicals for our fertilizers. We only have 2 factories in South Africa that creates these fertilizers. And this actually means that if you are using those things, you are not only paying a hell of a lot of money, but your whole production system is now dependent on a global value chain or input chain that you need to manage and make sure it's working. But you can't do that. That chain is out of your hands. So in South Africa, we have a real problem that the synthetic fertilizers are becoming very, very expensive. So what do you do? And this is the joke. Right in front of you is the ecology. There are opportunities in the ecology to substitute these expensive inputs. Regenerative farming systems can create this. And this is this could go all the way from effective microorganisms. I saw someone who showed me one little pill that cost 20 Rand, which is what, €1, could supply the nitrogen fertilizers for 1 hectare for 2 years. And why is that not used? Why do we have to buy these things? Whereas the nitrogen fertilizers, those bacteria, you can actually cultivate on your own if you know how. Also, you must understand, when you move into a regenerative system, your product changes. And now you have a different kind of product that you can sell in different ways. You know, on the market, regenerative products from regenerative farmers are going to become more and more important as we move closer and closer to sustainability. And guys, the sustainability is not just a beautiful word. There are real limits to the ecosystem that we are running into. And there are big buyers and big companies who are also realizing that they will not be able to source the inputs if they buy them from synthetic input using farmers. So there are real opportunities. In South Africa, we had a very famous case of a farmer who didn't even know he was capturing credits. And eventually they went, when they tested his soil, he got a big bonus. He could buy his house. And that was simply because he had cattle on land which everyone thought was wasted land. Guys, we have forgotten how the ecosystem works. And the youth especially, you must watch out for this, because people who tell you that are actually socializing you into the old unsustainable system. So what do you do if you're a farmer? The only way you can do this is to capture more than the 28% of the retail value, is to start a retail presence. If you farm near an urban center, that'll be a lot easier. But why can you not use WhatsApp, SMS, information and communication technology, social media, to start building a retail presence around your farm? And I'm not talking about selling one-on-one, to individual customers. You can even use these systems to create much larger buyer groups for the stuff. But that is only if you change the way you produce on the farm. The second opportunity is to think about the waste economy. I can tell you about an entrepreneur which I mentored, and she was actually quite successful in getting for free from farmers food that was non-standard. They were paying good money for this stuff to be thrown away. And what she did is she very basically chopped it up, covered it in lemon juice, and then dehydrated it with a solar dryer and then packaged that and sold that. So that product could now last for 6 months on the shelf without a refrigerator. Why are you guys not doing that? Why are you all selling the stuff and thinking only of selling the stuff to the biggest buyer who's going to give you absolutely nothing for what you produce? This is really important to understand where the wastes in your own farm lie and how can you productively turn these externalities around. So the first easy one is solar drying. I mean, solar dried tomatoes commands a huge price in South Africa, almost the price of meat. Why are you guys not doing that? Food waste is very high in nitrogen. So I know of a lot of urban farmers who have very, very small plots, less than 500 square meters, who can make it because they can harvest food waste from their customers. And they can create a food waste and food exchange system that lowers the cost for the customer, but then builds the human development of the people. If people are healthier, they are going to eat more expensive foods, which you as the farmer can supply. Stop thinking that there's only one thing you can do, and that is to grow food at high volume and sell it. Stop thinking that you can only grow food at high volume and sell it. You have to process your food. It is absolutely important. And the key here is technology. A solar dryer you can actually make without any sophisticated equipment. All you need is a frame and a gauze sheet, and you can start putting that in the sun. If you can cover it with a perspex or glass, it will be even better. Ladies and gentlemen, these opportunities are right in front of you. Why are we not seeing farmers taking this up? I've seen a lot of farmers do hydroponic farms, and they start with very, very expensive equipment. Then comes a guy who can do the same equipment with toilet pipes. Then comes a guy who can do exactly the same with black bags and river sand and the chemicals. Which one are you going to choose? And think about the financial costs of what you do, because your finance cost is higher than all other costs. So if you plunge into finance, you are wedded to the bank. The bank is going to say you must use the hybrid or the GMO seeds. And if you use the GMO seeds, then you can only use the expensive fertilizers. Then you can only use the plowing. And then you are back in the place where you will not make money, because you will be lying within a global value chain that really is there to extract produce from you at the lowest possible price. The alternative is to use social media and to bring people into your farm. Let them know what you are producing. Let them know that you are a farmer who can feed them, that you are a farmer who can feed them at a cost that could be lower than the retail cost. Why? Because you bring them into the farm and you can optimize your product. Let's take tomatoes. Are you going to sell them individually, packs of 4 or packs of 6? Or how are you going to sell this? Are you going to blend it with other onions and stuff like that? So these are really very simple questions, but it could create a market for you, and you can then sell from your farm right at just below retail level. And you know what? You will capture the market. People are market agents. You know, we want to buy stuff at the lowest price. And farmers are sitting on a gold mine, but they don't see it because they think they have to do only one thing. Let the other guys make the money. You can't do that. First thing you need to do is you must have a unique value proposition for your farm. What is it that you do? You know, are you growing just for volume, or what are you doing? Are you a presence in the community that can create value for the community, so the community can support you in your farm? And that is the key to the long-term viability of what you do. So what you need to do is you need to understand that any entrepreneur combines the factors of production. So bring the things together, bring the technology that you can maybe make together. Design your farm and take a leaf from permaculture designers so you can make the most of the biological processes on the farm. It's for free. You know, you simply have to do that. Then you can see that how are you producing, and in what way can you maximize, you know, for instance, labor. You are producing food and you can exchange food for labor in different ways, or you can get some of your laborers to actually start the enterprise or the retail enterprise on site, so that now You have two enterprises. The one produces, the other one sells, and the trade amongst them is closed and managed so that you extract the highest value for yourself as a farmer. We need farmers to do well if we want to feed the world. Well, there's already enough food. And I mean, like what the previous speaker said, we throw away most of the food. There's enough food. Why are we throwing the food away? We're throwing the food away because the food travels 1,600 kilometers before it gets to the customer. Of course, in that system, we're going to waste. So guys, the answer is not to fix that system, but to reinvent the system at the lower level. What now happens is you have designed your enterprise to include your customers. And this is going to be very important for the long-term viability of your enterprise. And I mean, if you really want to get capital, this is really going to count. Because now you can say that you have secured the market for your farm. And your market is not where you're selling your whole product or your whole harvest in one go for one big truck that picks it all up. But you are selling this piece by piece as it's harvested without any storage costs immediately at retail level. For any financier, if you make the books, you will have very high profitability and very low input costs, although your volumes might be quite a bit lower than the synthetic farmer, but who cares? Your profitability will be much higher, and the impact and benefits to the local area would be much better. Now, just think about this. If all your workers eat fresh food, now are they going to work for you? They're going to work a lot better for you. If you sell all your food to the city, your workers have to buy that same food at highly inflated prices from the informal vendor near to you. This is not going to work. It's not going to work in the long term. We need to heal the community and think about it in that way. So just now understand how your marketing and branding will be completely changed. Your marketing and branding will be focused on your local customers. And now you can create almost costless ways to bring people in with WhatsApp, with SMS. You can put a sign up, you can ring a bell. You know, these things are not expensive and they're not technology intensive. So think about that, and what is this going to do for the long-term sustainability of your farm? Excuse me. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm making these comments within the larger trends that we are witnessing in the world. If you are not a sustainable farmer, you will not get access to market, especially if you want to sell to these big guys. I mean, don't even go there. It's maybe not a good idea. But it is becoming really important, and these things are going to become important at the local level because water and things are become scarce, and you will also not get any kind of credit or support if you do not have climate smart infrastructure on your farm. You simply have to invest in those things, and these investments are much better than a financial investment in maybe a new tractor. Your meats and grains, you must also understand, you know, what are going to happen to that? There are people already growing meat in labs, and there are many different kinds of that. So we are seeing the emergence of food outside the ecosystem. You're going to have to find some kind of a synergy to access those kinds of markets. You know, and you could dry meat, make biltong or something, you know, and sell it in the local international market if you really want to do that. Why do you want to sell globally? Huh? Why? No, you don't want to. So what you need to think about is the way your technology can create the opportunity to command the market in the local area. Technology, decentralized manufacturing. You know, the big tragedy of South Africa is we have no small millers, or very, very few. So the people can't, South Africans, we export all our maize in 2 weeks, and then the rest of the year we eat Ukrainian maize. What's wrong with that? It just can't work like that. And the reason we do that is because we can't process the food at local level. And I mean, storage and things are technical problems that can be easily overcome. You also need to understand that your farm has to play a role in the life world of your customers. What the people want is to have good food at a good price. And you as a farmer can satisfy that. And I want to see farmers focusing on the local markets, because they can command these markets. They can beat the supermarkets. They can beat all the others. And this is a really good opportunity that has to be done. Think about circular systems. You know, all the waste that you are throwing away and water and those things, if they are recycled, what happens in the long run, you are lowering your own input costs on the farm. If you have a recycling system, let's say you're getting food waste from your customers in exchange for food, why don't you just get recyclable glass, metal, plastic, and paper? Well, paper is better to be mulched. Why don't you bring those things in, and now you can start a new business that'll be a new revenue stream. And I mean, you can even get the technology. There are technology out there to make new cups out of old plastic. Why can we not see people do that? I want to see that more often, because this is going to make a difference. So think about bio-waste, agroecology, fertility. Understand the benefits of a permaculture design to your farm. It is for free, ladies and gentlemen. Design is for free. And once you have designed, the design will do the work for you. And also your profits. Do a really good analysis of your cash flow. Are you paying too much for the input costs? And you probably are. And can you not substitute those, you know, with something else? Ladies and gentlemen, let me reveal my academic intention here. I'm speaking against this business model where we have to mobilize debt in order to create and finance an enterprise. No. For the youth, the future lies elsewhere. For you as the youth, you have to create business models where we can establish the business based on the design of the ecological processes. Once that is intact, only then will you make a true profit. Thank you very, very much. I'm open for questions. Oh, there's nobody.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nadia Malan. Practical advice and a perfect introduction for our next segment, which will feature our young farmers in South Africa. And of course, we have so many comments coming through. Really great to actually get them as well. Thank you so much to our audience and viewers from all over the continent, our beautiful continent. People saying wonderful presentation indeed, really insightful presentation. Thank you so much for the comments and all of the engagement. Before I invite our head of news at Food for Mzansi, who will be facilitating the next farmer discussion, just want to share a short video with you as well.
Home is where the heart is. It's where the food is. And the food you eat has to come from somewhere. Telling farmer stories has never been more important, because our future depends on them. Food for Mzansi tells the stories you need to hear, gives you the chance to make your voice heard, and gives you the information you need to thrive in South Africa. Wherever you are, whoever you are, this is what you need to know. Listen, scroll, read, subscribe. This is the new face of South African agriculture. These are the people putting food on your plate. These are their stories.
So beautiful. I now welcome the head of news at Food for Mzansi, Duncan Masiwa. And on this panel, we actually have my co-host who's going to be joining, Andile Ngobo. He is a KZN farmer and agricultural consultant. I also welcome on stage Guguletu Mahlangu, aquaponics farmer from the Northwest, and Analia van Niekerk, cattle farmer from Rates in the Free State. Can we get a bit of a round of applause for our farmers?
Thank you so much, Dawn. Now, I am quite excited to be leading this specific panel discussion, being on stage with young farmers that I absolutely love and adore. Now, we know that although that agriculture has a very important role to South Africa's future, there are many farming practices that are having an undesirable impact, not only on the well-being of people, but also on food. And I think it's very important that, farmers are given the skills to not only contribute to sustainable agriculture, but also so that they can incorporate those things into their communities and have an impact on their local community, which is why I'm so excited to be with this panel here with me today. I'm joined by Andile Ngobo, and I'm also joined by Annelia van Niekerk, and as well as Gugulethu Mahlangu. Thank you so much for joining us. Awesome. I want to get straight into it. We've had a lot of discussions today about, sustainable agriculture, what that looks like, why it is so important. Maybe if I start with you, Andile, when you hear the word sustainable agriculture, what does that mean to you?
So there's always a PR response, which is a textbook response, and then there's the realistic, the more realistic on the ground response. But sustainable agriculture generally obviously means that you're farming for the future at any given time. You're not selfishly farming, just thinking about profits in the now, but you're also considering what is left for anybody else who comes in after you to utilize the same land, to do the same thing that you're doing. And then obviously there's the aspect of the planet. As you know, I did mention earlier, we are struggling with climate change. So, with issues like that at hand, you can't keep making the situation worse. And we just had Dr. Nord just before us talking exactly about that, the fact that we are so in tune into spending so much on inputs because we are so profit-driven that we only believe that anything that works commercially needs inputs that are scientifically proven and that are going to fast-track the process. And that obviously does cause a huge problem when it comes to sustainability because we can't measure or gauge how much damage we're doing at any given time when we're doing everything from a scientific perspective. And so for me, just sustainability generally means that you are literally farming with the future in mind.
I think that's so important what you just highlighted there. And maybe you can also add, Gugulethu, when you think of the word sustainable agriculture, what does that mean to you as a young farmer?
For me, sustainable agriculture is very important, and it always leaves one questioning a lot of things. What is it that we're trying to sustain? And I think Andile really highlighted the importance of it, to leave things as they are or even better for the next generation. So you need to look at this holistically. So as a farmer, my responsibility is to feed the nation, contribute to food security. How am I doing that? Am I continuously using pesticides? Am I continuously mining the soil, without putting much back to it? Am I profit driven? Am I wasting food? Am I able to harvest and take it to the market quickly? All of these things, what do I do with my waste? So it's very holistic. So as a farmer, sustainability is a constant challenge. But I think that, the more we have such discussions, the more we change the mindset of being a young farmer and being sustainable. And having, policymakers and the government assisting us into making this a reality. Because at the end of the day, farming we are profit driven. We need to make a living. And how do we do that? So I think it's definitely a mindset shift that sustainability, is a long-term process, but it's definitely achievable.
Annelia, maybe you can add to that. We had Gugulethu saying that sustainability is a long-term process. You are a cattle breeder. How does sustainability look like for you, and what does it mean to you?
Well, sustainability for me means that growing agriculture and moving forward. When I think about sustainability, it is about growth and about ensuring that future generations can go on where we left farms for them, and to ensure that they can farm on those farms. I think both of them highlighted, the big issues about sustainability and what it is. And I think the most important thing is we need to think about sustainability in the sense that we need to meet the consumers' demands and the needs, and that can happen through sustainability.
Thank you so much for that. I mean, Andile, you broke down what that means for you, sustainable agriculture. And I think there's a increasing need for farmers to start considering, adopting sustainable agricultural practices. What does sustainable agriculture look like in your farming enterprise? Maybe take us to that.
At first, we are in the vegetable production enterprise in agriculture. So obviously, it's one of those rapid turnaround aspects of the industry. You have crops going in, 3 months later you're harvesting, the next ones are going in, 3 months later you're harvesting. But remember, if you're planting every month, that becomes an every month harvest for the duration of the year. So it's in, out, in, out, in, out consistently. Your soils get tired, because you overwork them so much. You're planting various crops that are demanding on nitrogen, demanding on phosphorus, demanding on potassium, and the only way you can replenish it as fast as you're taking it out is by putting in more synthetic types of fertilizers, right? But like it was explained in the previous speaker, again, Dr. Nord said, the ecology, nature always knows how to correct itself, but we don't give it a chance because, as we are working on trying to sustain our profits, so we keep extracting, and then we force back more of these inputs via fertilizers. So there are various ways in which we then try and assist this issue in terms of my industry. Those of us who are conscious of sustainability. I, for one, will make an example. I was approached by a company that is based in KZN, specifically South Africa, and they are a timber company, right? And obviously, wherever they prepare timber, they have wood shavings and shavings from trees that have been happening for the last 50 years, maybe even more than that, from when the grandfather had the plant and the dad and now the son. So they realize that where they are dumping, which goes back to what you were saying about wastage, where they are dumping their waste, it's actually decomposed to a point where it's giving off the best natural, how can I put it? The best natural components that the environment needs, like nitrogen, in order for your plants to grow. So they then started packaging that and selling it as an alternative, as an organic alternative to fertilizer. And I'll proudly say that the company is called, what is it? It's, I'm just trying to think, it's new. So I'll remember the name of the actual product, okay? But it's called Vitasoil. They call it Vitasoil because basically the wood shavings are decomposing in like a dump that's just dug out from the soil, right? So it's a very affordable, because all they're doing is that they're letting it sort of decompose, ferment, all they do is package it. So it's a very affordable alternative to chemical fertilizers. And I have been seeing the results. And my very first question was, if I decide to switch to your product, how can you guarantee me that you're going to be sustainable yourself? So how much of it can you dig out before it runs out? I don't want to have to go back in 6 years' time to using synthetic fertilizers because you've run out of your pit of the stuff, So, and they guarantee that, over 100 years, and the company still runs till today. They have more than one plant, and they've also approached other various plants that do the same thing to start looking at the properties of what's been happening in their dumps. And they found that they have a sustainable supply of the actual Vitasoil product.
I love that. I love it when there are success stories already about, farmers implementing sustainable agricultural practices. And I think it's so important that, those success stories get highlighted. We had Dr. Nadir saying that sustainable agriculture is not just a beautiful word. There's a reason why we do it. I think it comes with a slew of perks. Maybe you Google it, so maybe you can take us through some of the benefits of sustainable agriculture, and maybe also highlight, some of the benefits that you've seen in your farming enterprise.
The benefits of sustainability will always, for me personally, come back to the soil. It's estimated that, Africa is going to be the breadbasket of the world in 2050. And, without soil, there's not much that we can contribute. So sustainability will always come back to soil. How are we treating our soil? Are we putting back as much as we are taking out? Are we conserving? So some of the benefits of sustainability will always start with the soil. So if you are practicing, like Andrew Oddington from Regen SA was saying that, regenerative agriculture, that's, just a fancy word of replenish and give back. So if we're doing that, if we're practicing regenerative agriculture and we're not tilling, and the reason why we're not tilling is that we're not exposing the soil to soil erosion, and we are constantly keeping our soils covered with cover crops, keeping living roots inside there. Not only are we accelerating soil health, but we are finally, positioning ourselves to be sustainable, because the soil is going to give and give and give. We just need to take care of it. So with me, I'm always going to advocate for soil health, but, as a person who's now ventured into smart agriculture, who's doing aquaponics, I'm realizing that there's so many ways to skin a cat. It's just important that we get exposed to these opportunities so that we can be able to be sustainable. If we are going to do hydroponics or aquaponics, why are we positioning ourselves to do those things? Why is it important that we start these types of farms? So for me, I've seen the benefits, not only to producing higher yields, good quality foods, but also to save the planet. Climate change is a real thing. Unemployment is a real thing. So sustainability in agriculture can help mitigate so much of that.
I love that, and if the camera is able to pan down, I see that Gugulethu came out full farmer gear. She's got her boots on, so she's a farmer at heart. Thank you so much. And, Analea, you, like I said, you are a livestock farmer, a cattle breeder. I'm quite interested to know, how does sustainable agricultural practice look like at a cattle farm?
Okay, well, for me, I come from a very traditional farming background, and I needed to change my mindset, to sustainable agriculture. My dad is a farmer, and my grandfather was a farmer, and I think farming has changed so much, to kind of like a business. You need to run it like a business. And I think back to when my grandfather was a farmer, I think they just did it for the love of it. But today we need to think about it as a business, and you need to run it as a business to make it successful. And for me, as a livestock farmer or a cattle farmer, you farm with nature. I mean, you work with nature. You need to take care of your grass, your soil, your water, like you said as well. And for me, as a cattle farmer, I look at implementing rotational grazing strategies. Every other week I rotate my cattle between different pastures. You get farmers that leave the cattle in a pasture for weeks on end, and that, causes overgrazing. And so you need to implement these strategies. I even look at managing diseases. We had foot and mouth disease outbreak, and that can affect humans as well. So you, as a cattle farmer and as a livestock farmer, have the responsibility to make sure that your cattle, to prevent diseases, and to protect the people on your farm from those diseases. And I think that will, that is sustainable. You need to put those things in place. It will ensure that your farming is sustainable and going forward.
I think it's so interesting that you mentioned, that I'm coming from a family of farmers, people that are set in their ways. Was that an easy, conversation to have with your father, your grandfather? And what advice do you have for young farmers, that whose parents are still actively involved in the farming business, but they're quite set in, how they farm? What advice do you have for young farmers?
Well, for me, it was a very, very big challenge, going against your dad, and coming with new strategies and telling him, you read this and you search this and find new information. And I think you never stop learning new things. And I think for farmers out there that farm with their dads or in a family business, I think it's important to communicate and that there be communication between each other and to always do research. And when I go to my dad with a new strategy or a new plan, I always make sure that I have all my facts straight. And it's tough to go against, like I said, the traditional farming. But if we want to go forward, we need to start implementing sustainable strategies in farming.
No, definitely, it might be tough, but it is very important. Andile, I want to get back to you, and I think maybe it sort of piggybacks on what Analia said. Is sustainable farming methods viable, compared to, traditional farming?
Well, I think for most farmers, that's the thing. Whether your grandfather, your father was farming before you and they don't want to change, or whether as an emerging farmer, you're very skeptical about changing your ways, it always comes down to one thing. People are afraid of change because they're afraid to lose money. That's the biggest thing. See, they are always under the impression that the only way to keep things going is if you implement the very same methods that you did the year before, the year before that, and the year before that because you made money, and the only time you reconsider is when you crash. And it always takes a crashing point before you realize that, oh, maybe I should have started implementing bits of something as opposed to just completely cutting out the notion or the idea that change is good. So I think, unfortunately, in that diagram that you always see with the three circles, the people, planet, profit is always at the top for a reason. So it's the first thing that you consider before anything else. By the time you get to considering your people, it's because you're happy with the money you're making, and then are they okay? Can they make more? Are they safe? And then from that, it's do we actually have the platform to continue, which is obviously the planet or our environment or our inputs or the land or whatever, but are we then looking after that? So I think that sometimes, as much as we are very profit-driven and we want to secure the bag all the time, but it's important to sometimes take a step back and start looking at the sustainability from a perspective of what are the chances that I could continue doing this in the next 10 to 20 years, and what should I start changing now? How much can I afford to lose now? Looking at making sure that I'm sustainable in the future as opposed to crashing. Yeah.
I think that's a very important conversations that farmers should be having with themselves, because there's always a new development within the agricultural space. There's always new trends, and it's important for farmers to consider these innovations. For you, Gugulethu, it's one thing to talk about sustainable agriculture and talk about how important it is. Is it easy to to farm sustainable?
I get the tough ones, get the tough questions. I think it is easy. It is definitely easy to farm sustainable. We just need the patience for it, because it's not an easy fix. A lot of people get into agriculture, maybe with not being prepared for the realities of it. Agriculture as a business is a long-term investment. That's why we'll get probably our fathers and grandfathers, who are so stuck with their ways, because it works for them. It has worked for them for generations. So, it's very easy to come in and go back to the soil. I have a piece of land and I'm going to make sure that this soil in 5 years' time, I don't need to put in a lot of input costs on it. I don't need to maybe, plow it. So I'm going to invest in making sure that my soil is healthy. I'm going to invest in, building organic matter and, maybe using what Andile was saying with the wood shavings, putting carbon back into the soil, increasing my topsoil health. So all these things is an investment. So it is easy, it's an investment, and it takes time. So we, I feel like as the youth need to come in with that mindset of we are going to change how agriculture is, and we are going to do that for the benefit of sustainability, for the benefit of our future as well.
I love that, and I think a key word there is that farming sustainably is an investment, to ensure what Ndile talked about, that you are, that you exist within the next 10, 15 years as a farming enterprise. Analia, coming to you, besides farmers, there are so many other role players within the sustainable food system. We have growers, we have food processors, distributors, retailers, consumers. What role, do these players have in ensuring a sustainable agricultural system?
I think all of them play a very, very important role in sustainability, in agriculture. I think all of them need to have the sense of accountability, towards sustainability in agriculture. For instance, if I can focus on the consumers, the consumers are, we as farmers, they are our clients. And without our consumers, we can't go forward. And to ensure that we can meet the consumers' needs and demands, we need to be sustainable, like I said. And we need to focus on what they want, so that we can produce it for them to meet their needs and demands. Even, we as waste managers, we as farmers are waste managers. We have waste on our farms, and it is still scary to see how many farmers do not, dispose of the waste in the correct manner. And that can go into your underground water, your rivers, and then, people use that for irrigation. And on your maize, your crops, and so on, your animals drink that water, and that can have a very negative impact on agriculture and the environment. So I think it's important, like I said, for everybody to have the sense of accountability to ensure that we're moving forward.
I love that. And Andile, just to go to you, agriculture is one of the biggest contributors to global warming. What role do young farmers, specifically in the context of South Africa, what role do young farmers have to play in sustainable agriculture?
Sure, that's a tough question. One of the first ones I always go back to is obviously information. I just think we need to consume a lot of information to understand, firstly, what is it that we are doing that is affecting, our climate as farmers, So even from a perspective of transportation, as you have mentioned, that there are many facets to agriculture, not just the production alone. So there's an aspect of understanding what, how we operate, sustainably as well. So is there a need for all these carbon emissions, the type of machinery we use, the vehicles we use to transport our goods, that sort of thing. It's obviously a much, like I said, it's a much bigger problem than an individual can focus on, So that's why I go back to information. You see, the more people who understand it, the more people who know about it, and then the more that can be done. Just to make a typical example, so what I was saying about the turn that the agricultural industry has made in the last 5 years. 5 years ago, we'd be sitting on a panel discussing how we would like the youth to be in the forefront of the discussion in agriculture, and we don't want to have a summit where you find that everybody who's there is 40, 50, 60 years old. But today we are at a platform where the majority of the people involved in agriculture are on these platforms where we share information are the youth. But it took a platform such as Food from Mzansi to come together, for example, to have that base for us to be able to have a voice, and more people started to come forward. So with the same issue, when it comes to global warming, it's, that's a global issue. So no one farmer will have a solution to the issue, I still want to get my stuff to the market. I still want it to be on a truck because I need volumes, you know what I mean? So from me pulling back from using a truck and deciding to go back to rail, for example, is not really going to solve the issue fast enough, but understanding this, coming together as young people who still have an opportunity to sit on platforms that can enforce change, that is when we will actually know what the strategy to implement will be.
Yeah. And I think as much as, it's important for young people to play an active role in sustainable farming, it's not easy, and Leah, you made mention of it, it's not an easy transition. And I think there's a lot of support that needs to go with that. And I think I want to kick this question to you, Gugu, and I think Andile and Annalie, you can also add on to it. What are some of the key drivers that will help farmers transition towards sustainable agriculture?
With sustainable agriculture, I think what Andile said, at the end of the day, agriculture, is becoming more of an interest for young people, especially to get into it as a business. So we would ideally like to make money. So I think what can really facilitate that is training and education, as Andile was saying. That is key for me. Farming, in as much as, when we have all these conferences, we have all the old guys, in their 40s and their 50s, because it comes with a lot of knowledge and a lot of experience. So if we can just collaborate, maybe the old farmers and the young farmers, they come together, and mentorship is very important as well, because at the end of the day, farmers emulate each other. If I'm going to see Andile, or if I'm going to see Annalie doing big things and implementing regenerative agriculture practices, I'm going to be attracted to that. So it's very important that we learn from the older generation, so that we can change how we farm currently. And this can all be facilitated by constant support, like with this session that we're having now from Food from Mzansi, from the government as well, being involved. Skills is very important in this country. So, government, in as much as it gives us funds, it also needs to give us training and kind of see it from start to finish. That's how I think we can really win this thing.
Yeah, Andile, maybe just to add on to that, what kind of support do farmers need in order to move towards a sustainable agricultural system?
Okay, I'll touch on the question regarding sustainability. I think it is also a mindset thing. I think a lot of young people in agriculture or in the farming space need to realize that the mindset of being in it for the long haul is the most important aspect of it all. I think it's a self thing. You first got to be okay with feeling like you're behind because you've decided to stop using NPK before you'll be in a space of being able to implement that change. You will not implement the change for as long as personally you're not okay with having to fall back slightly in order to, like Gugu said, to invest in the future of your operation. It goes back to a very funny story with a lot of people that now see me 5 years later that had gone into the industry because they were inspired mostly by my pictures, would say, oh no, farming is very hard. How are you smiling in every single picture that you've ever posted from the last 550 pictures? And I'll say, well, you see, the thing is, I'm not smiling because everything's going well and it's not hard at all. I just think, because of my mindset, I know that I'm at the right place at the right time to be doing this. So I'm content and sort of happy with my distraught, with the difficulties of farming, even on that particular day. But your mindset really has to change. You need to get into it for the long haul, and that's the only way you'll be able to implement and actually start to farm sustainably. Your last question was,
what kind of support do farmers need?
We always go back to government at some point, and I've always said one thing when it comes to government support. Sometimes it's not about freebies. It's not about getting things for free. Okay, you don't need to be given packs of Vitasoil, in tons, just to feel like, okay, I'm going to be sustainable now because I've got the stuff. But I always say that sometimes government just needs to find a strategy to kind of subsidize farmers in some way in South Africa to alleviate the pressure. And I always go back to the two main costs in farming. It'll always be fuel and it'll always be labor. The next one will always be labor. And as your fuel prices increase, so it becomes almost impossible to operate at the same level and the same scale in the hopes that you're going to make a profit. And then of course, sustainability goes flying out the window as soon as you have to start supplementing in order to increase or to grow, which is not a good thing at all. So I think it's just looking at ways in which government can support farmers by subsidizing some way, somehow, when it comes to inputs.
And anything that you maybe want to add, Analia, especially focusing on the livestock industry, what kind of, this is an industry that you are involved in 24/7. What kind of support do farmers need in order to actually move from a traditional farming system towards a sustainable farming system?
I think definitely financing, it plays a big role, moving from the traditional to sustainability. But I think like a different topic is education, educating people on what is sustainable agriculture and how can they implement it and the strategies that they can use. I think, and I'm very excited to see in South Africa how, people are being educated in the agricultural sector, A couple of years ago, it wasn't a big thing in South Africa, but now, it's so amazing to see how many people are being educated and trained in the agriculture sector, and I think all of them are focusing on sustainable agriculture because it's so important to make sure that we grow and that we go forward.
And I think it's amazing to see that, looking at the three of you, that farming sustainably is actually not a death sentence. It's very much doable. And I want to thank you guys for joining us on today's panel discussion. Andile, thank you so much, Guguletu, and as well as you, Analia. Well, that's it. Back over to you, Dawn.
Thank you so much, Duncan Masiba, the head of news at Food for Mzansi. We are nearing the end. I would now like to invite Ivor Price. Ivor Price, in the last 21 years, Ivor Price has won many global and local awards for his work in print, digital, and broadcast media. For Food for Mzansi, the South African agricultural news publication, of which he is the co-founder and editor-in-chief, has won 11 global awards, yay! including Africa's Best Digital News Startup in 2019. Over to you, Ivor.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon. What if I told you that at this very moment, financial institutions across Africa were scrambling to promote trade under the African Continental Free Trade Area? That ambitious plan to create the world's largest free trade zone. Would you believe me that if I told you that just yesterday, President Cyril Ramaphosa was advocating for a Made in Africa label as the continent writes its own economic success story? A label that our president in South Africa says should be featuring on our principal grains and grains across Africa, including corn, wheat, and rice. Did you know that at this very moment, more than 500 rural African youth are being trained in coding to ultimately support young farmers and agripreneurs, specifically in Cote d'Ivoire, Kenya, Nigeria, and Senegal? Why is it that so many Africans know the names of American and European music and movie stars, but not the everyday heroes who go above and beyond to feed them? The heroes like Guguletu Mahlangu, Analia van Niekerk, Andile Ngobu, Mbali Nwoku from South Africa we met today. The heroes like Rogers Kirwa from Nigeria, who was on our panel earlier. Munya Mudimeni, who joined us from Harare in Zimbabwe. Ekundaya Mayowa, who was live with us from Lagos, Nigeria. Did you know that 60% of the African population, 60% of the African population are smallholder farmers? Did you know that 23% of this continent's GDP comes from agriculture? Now, these are just some of the facts that inspired Food for Mzansi to now also build Africa's first continent-wide agriculture publication. A big and ambitious project which we've been working on for many, many months behind the scenes, also traveling to many parts of Africa, meeting with key farmers and agripreneurs in different parts of the continent, meeting with the movers and shakers of the agricultural sector. And you already met the head of news at foodforafrica.com, which is live today. I wanted to stand Lucinda Dordley. She doesn't need to stand, you can see the afro. So this publication is called foodforafrica.com, and it will have an initial primary focus on East Africa as a region, as well as Sub-Saharan Africa, as well as parts of West Africa. But within a year, we do foresee that we'll be editorially covering the greater part of this continent, at least English-speaking Africa for now. So African farmers, African young farmers, and African young agripreneurs are definitely rising up. And Food for Africa will be there to follow them every step of the way, as we have done in the last 3 years with Food for Mzansi and South African farmers. From the maize fields in Kenya to the cassava farms in Nigeria and the cattle giants in South Africa, we salute the agriculturalists who bring food to our tables. And our team across the continent will strive to be the African Farmers United Voice. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you foodforafrica.com.
Africa's farmers deserve a voice. They deserve a place to find information and share their story with the world. Food for Africa gives you the information you need to thrive on the continent, tells the stories you need to hear, and gives you the chance to make your voice heard. Whether you grow the food or you eat it, you should know what's going on in Africa's agri-sector, because it's where your food comes from. We are uniting Africa's farmers, and we want to be your voice.
We can't describe what a huge moment this is for agriculture across the continent, and we're so excited to see the traffic coming in from all parts of Africa. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So please do continue sharing your stories with us. The one thing we decided at Food for Mzansi 3 years ago when we started out was that no story was going to be too small. You know, Kobus and I have been in the media industry for a long time. I'm clocking 21 years this year, and Kobus a bit longer. And we realized that actually media has got so much power and influence. And for most part, for longer than a century in this country, at least, stories were only valid if they were huge farmers. Nobody saw the middlemen. Nobody saw the smaller farmers. At Food for Mzansi and foodforafrica.com, no story is too small. We've literally interviewed people. Wasn't it you, Masele, who at some stage, your car was your office? No, it wasn't you? That was Rampete. Yeah. So thank you for cheering for Food for Mzansi. It's a movement for change, and we'll be here to cheer you on every step of the way. Dawn, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ivor. I'd like you to stay on the stage, though, and I'd also like to invite my colleagues to come and join me. The head of news at foodforafrica.com, Duncan Masiwa. Can you also come up, please? Lucinda Dordley, Nolutandu Ngakani, she's the head of health for Mzansi. Carly, can you come forward? All of our journalists, all of our freelancers here. Terry Ann Browers, she's our Sindelizwe Citizen Journalist of the Year. Kobus, we can't be on stage without you. So these are the faces and the people behind Food for Mzansi, foodforafrica.com, Health for Mzansi. And of course, our virtual team is also joining us from all over South Africa and other parts as well. They're also joining us. Not everyone could be here today, but this is our team. And I'd also like to invite Piet Potgieter from VKB to come up stage, please, as well. We have a little surprise from VKB as well. Can you come on stage? Aren't they beautiful? Let's all smile and look pretty. So as you know, it is our birthday and we have a beautiful cake. Anybody who has something just to light the sparkles, we won't blow the sparkles, okay? Just to be sure. Yes. Oh. So Food for Mzansi is 3 years old today. Look at that pretty cake, everyone. So pretty. Shall we sing happy birthday?
If you insist.
Is it a thing? Birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Mzansi. Happy birthday to you. Yay! Thank you so much. As we wrap up, my co-host is actually seated, but I would just like to thank all of the people who made today possible, Access Bank and VKB, the more than 550 farmers and agripreneurs who joined us virtually. Thank you so much. Speakers from across Africa and the world, our digital partner, Yay Baby, and the technical team. Please just also say thank you to the technical team. Those guys were keeping us on air and going for this summit. Tanya Okam from Social Weaver Communications, and of course, Minister Toko Didiza, who joined us earlier on the day. Thank you so much. Andile, thank you so much for co-hosting with me. It was an absolute pleasure, and I hope that you will enjoy the rest of your day. For those that are here, we have lunch available, and to everyone joining us virtually, thank you so much. We appreciate all your support, and have a great day further.
They say that agriculture is a labor of love. Love for what? To be there when the green breaks the ground, or to see how the smallest beginning grows to new heights. Maybe it's the way in which we bring people together, or just knowing we're making a difference from tractor to table. We are there, and we don't do it for one of these reasons, but all of them. We do it for the love of the land.
Food for Mzansi proudly salutes the unsung heroes of agriculture in South Africa. Initially, its co-founders, Ivor Price and Cobus Lawrence, embarked on a 3-month project to tell some of the stories so often overlooked by the mainstream media.
It's special to us. It means something to us. It means something to the readers we represent. It kind of feels strange calling them readers anyway. It feels like family.
Food for Mzansi believes in the power of agriculture to unite the nation, to heal, to move South Africa forward.
Agriculture is like the big common denominator in South Africa, since it touches everybody every day, and also it is such a microcosm of all the different divisions, and many of the things that are wrong in South African society are just laid bare there on a very basic level.
Food for Mzansi's editorial team unashamedly shares success stories and good news from the farms and agribusinesses who feed South Africa. That being said, they don't hesitate to speak truth to power.
When I first got that call, it kind of shook me to my core. I also cried with him when he was relaying his emotions, and as a member of the Food for Mzansi team, to actually have played a hand, it makes me emotional. Sorry. To have played a hand in helping him get justice is a big honor for me.
They've never been featured on any kind of magazine. They've never been featured on any type of publication. So when you connect with these people and they tell your stories and it eventually gets published on Food for Mzansi, when these people come back to you and they say, you know, because of that article, they were able to connect with more farmers, they were able to infiltrate more markets. I think for me, that's one of the most rewarding feelings.
So I think we represent what people would call the Rainbow Nation. You know, people think that it doesn't exist, but I think it exists at Food for Mzansi. We bring together people not because of the color of their skin or the language that they speak or their background, but because they love agriculture and they love to produce food. And I think that is what we represent at Food for Mzansi, that face of agriculture.